City Council meeting held this day on September 22nd, 2022. My name is Joseph Citro, and I will be chairman for this meeting. Councilman Goods, do you have invocation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Chairman and council member. This morning I had the distinct pleasure of introducing Apostle Shani House. She has been a minister and licensed since 1998 in her early teenage years to preach the gospel of our Savior Jesus Christ. In December 2000, she was ordained as an evangelist. In 2008, she was ordained as an apostle. Currently, she is the co-founder of Phase 2 Faith Ministries and the CEO of Uniquely Designed Enterprise, LLC, Tampa, Florida. She is married to her husband, Dwayne House, who is also a pastor as well. And they have 6 children. Apostle House is a highly influential person in her community and nation. She traveled extensively to speak encouragement to those who have no sense of direction, lost hope through tragic events, and helping those who believe they aren't capable of helping themselves. Her passion has helped many to become nurses, entrepreneurs, and very successful people. This morning I introduce Apostle House and her husband.
If everyone could please rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance after the invocation. Please, ma'am.
We thank you, we praise you, we glorify your name, that we're all gathered in this place. And I pray, God, that we're all gathered together to be on one accord and unified in unity, Lord. God, I know that we all have different opinions and thoughts and ideas. I pray, God, that this will be done in peace and in order today. God, I honor even the city councilman, Orlando Cruz, and the staff and the members that are here today, gathered in your name. And I pray for peace, and I speak joy, and I speak long-suffering and gentleness wherever it needs to be applied in this meeting today. And God, we give you all the praise, all the honor, and the glory, because we can't do nothing without you. And we give you honor, and we just honor you and praise you today for what you're doing. We even thank you for the breath in our bodies, Lord. Some of us, we drunk our coffee, we got dressed, and we didn't acknowledge you, but we're acknowledging you now. And we say thank you for life. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Carlson. Vieira.
Here.
Maniscalco.
Here.
Hurtek. Here. Goods. Here. Miranda.
Here.
Citro.
Here.
You have a physical forum.
Let the record reflect that Councilman Carlson is with us. Yes, sir.
I just want to say this is my 12th day after having COVID. I asked the other day if you guys felt uncomfortable with me being here. I've tested negative twice. I can also wear a mask, so just want to let you all know.
Mr. Shelby.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of Council, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Today's meeting is available to the citizens of Tampa, able to watch, listen, and view this meeting on Spectrum Channel 640 and Frontier Channel 15, and on the internet at tampagov.net/live stream. Members of the public can attend in person in City Council chambers today. Here we are at 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, or virtually participate in this meeting using what is referred to by Florida statutes and rules as communications media technology. Now, pre-registration is required to speak virtually with the use of CMT, and that is available, the instructions on the City Council's webpage and also on the agenda and the notice of today's meeting. Again, public comment, other than the subject of general public comment on the subject of the workshop, will be taken at the end of the workshop. And Mr. Chairman, I ask that Council adopt, waive the rules to adopt the use of CMT for today's meeting.
A motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Council members, I have one walk-on agenda item. It is the height of the hurricane season, and I would just like to make sure that our citizens know that this city is well prepared in case of any event that may happen due to a hurricane. Chief Bennett?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Council. Good morning, public. John Bennett, Chief of Staff. I appreciate you accommodating this short walk-on this morning. Once I saw the spaghetti models pointing our way, I thought it would be a good idea to have a really brief update from our Emergency Management Coordinator, John Yetapassis. So, John, if you could join me today, and if the back office can bring up his PowerPoint. John's going to be very brief, but the content is heavy. So please review the PowerPoint, and please, to the community, go online and look at our emergency management webpage and make sure you connect to the most up-to-date communication processes for the city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Good morning. Also, just want to say thank you very much for all the leadership over the last 2 years. Definitely unprecedented events in emergency management since COVID-19 and obviously going into the peak of the season. But thank you. Thank you from the Mayor's office, administrators, Chief Tripp, who we work under at the Office of Emergency Management. A lot of work goes on in the background to ensure the City of Tampa is well prepared for storm season. So quickly, just wanted to jump in, just quick overview of the Atlantic Basin climatology. If you see on the slide here, September and October, definitely high activity. We are in the height of the hurricane season. But just to touch, in September, a lot of the tropical waves come off of the African coast and they make their way across the Atlantic. Hurricane Irma is a good example of that type of storms. But then in October, we see off the Yucatan Peninsula a lot of those quicker storms like Hurricane Michael that hit up in the Panhandle. A little less time to prepare for those, but they do intensify quickly. As you can see just on the slides, those are about for 100 years named storms that are developed. For the 5-day tropical outlook, as Chief Bennett was alluding to, there is a system we are monitoring currently just above Venezuela. That storm currently is too far out on any forecast. I know there's a lot of media attention out there, but anything outside of that 5-day window is still out there, but it is something we are going to be monitoring daily as those updates come from the National Hurricane Center, but currently no current threats for the Tampa Bay region. Just real quick on names, the next one will be Hermine, but this is a good reminder. If you saw a lot of the news coming out of Puerto Rico, Hurricane Fiona, a Category 1 storm, can still cause widespread devastation to a community, especially flooding that we've seen out there. So it's definitely, even on those lower category storms, that's something we definitely need to be prepared for. Situation reports, I believe all of you do receive our situation reports out of the Office of Emergency Management. That is our way to ensure situational awareness. There's a lot of uncertainty with storms, but we want to make sure the latest information is getting out to all of our leadership as well as our administrators and our operational components. We will continue to push those out as more information becomes available. And as well, that documents all the activities we're doing out in the field and from the City of Tampa level. So real quick, an overview of the City of Tampa hurricane plans and operations. I just wanted to touch slightly. We have a very comprehensive emergency operations plan at the City of Tampa. This really lays out our framework. We have our blue skies table of organization, where our organization is, but during an emergency, we restructure how we respond and recover from emergency events. This document lays out that framework for the city. We also have our Know Your Role program through Human Resources, and that ensures that every City of Tampa employee does have a role during an emergency. There's 4,800 employees in the City of Tampa. We're an office of 4. We have to have a whole city government and as well as Hillsborough County and up at different levels of government to respond for an emergency. But we do make pre-assignments at our shelters, our push teams, our emergency response centers that clear debris, law enforcement, fire rescue, but we use the Know Your Role program to pre-identify personnel ahead of time, so when that emergency happens, those personnel have the training and are able to respond quickly. As I alluded to before, how we organize during emergencies, we break them up into emergency support functions, and that is outside of our department mode, and really those gray skies in the sense that our departments, we need to get them together. So within ESF1 transportation or public infrastructure under ESF3, we want to ensure that these groups of different departments that do work together day to day are embedded with each other and able to communicate, share information quickly, and if there are resource needs, they are grouped up in this organizational structure. We do have a tropical cyclone matrix, and really, again, all the uncertainty with storms, this does provide us with guidelines and checklists of items we need to do at certain time thresholds. Again, going even 120 hours out, we're getting briefings from the National Weather Center, National Hurricane Center, our partners at Hillsborough County, but going up even closer, we have action items that we do need to accomplish before a landfall of a hurricane. For hurricane evacuation decision-making process, again, going all those days out, we're monitoring these storms well out into the Atlantic or into the Gulf before they're any threat to us. And as we're getting those reports, we're getting those days out. Going back to Hurricane Irma, when I was working, it was Monday, we were highly engaged with National Weather Service. The storm came that Saturday up in our way. So days out, we're very engaged with our partners, getting the latest information on decision-making for evacuations. They are unpredictable, storms speed up, their intensity changes, but we work very closely with Hillsborough County and a lot of lessons learned from Hurricane Irma's evacuation to do it together. One, to ensure that shelters are open before an evacuation order is made, but that decision goes hand in hand with the City of Tampa and Hillsborough County. One thing to note, our evacuation zones did change this year in 2022, and specifically I highlight East Tampa up here. They are now in a Zone E. That is a worst-case scenario, like a Hurricane Michael scenario, Category 5 storm, to get storm surge up to that level. But that is about 54,000 people that were not in an evacuation zone in the past that now currently are. So I just encourage everybody to go to tampa.gov/hurricane, know your zone, because if an evacuation order is made, we will do it by zone. In this slide, I just wanted to, again, highlight the partnership with Hillsborough County. Any large disaster, I was up at Hurricane Michael in the Panhandle, it takes a whole government approach. City of Tampa will not be able to handle a catastrophic storm by itself. It will be Hillsborough County, the state of Florida, FEMA, federal agencies, the National Guard. And all those resource requests do get pushed up through the city on what we need at all those levels of government. To highlight one other operational item, we have emergency response centers that pre-stage before a storm. Those are our public works teams that go out after the storm in the all clear to begin clearing roadways so emergency responders can get into life safety operations. But that's that initial first push off of priority roads to get debris off that road so first responders can get in, perform search and rescue missions and other life safety needs. Public shelters, we have 46 of them in Hillsborough County. Again, they provide that immediate life safety needs for our public to have a safe place to go during a storm. We do recommend to everyone to please pre-plan ahead of time to have another option if possible at family and friends outside of an evacuation zone, but shelters will be made available for all residents that need a safe place to go. We did sign a memorandum of understanding 2 years ago with Hillsborough County to provide city personnel in city shelters moving forward. So that was in 2020. And again, lessons learned from Hurricane Irma, but again, close partnership with the county on this. Special needs shelters is an additional shelters is Irwin Tech and Yingling Center that are set up for that. Any residents that require electrical equipment, oxygen, dialysis, or have any other medical needs that need medical care during a storm, they need to register now. The phone number is on the screen, 813-307-8063. That is managed by Department of Health. But I very strongly urge any residents that may need to take advantage of this to register today. There is a process to get registered for one of these shelters. HART will also set up 9 emergency evacuation bus routes through HART. Those bus routes get you to one of 4 shelters, Smith, Pizzo, Middleton, and Shields. They have emergency shelter bus stops on those routes, as you see on the screen, but also you can just flag down a bus on those routes once they're activated. They will continue to run continuously until wind speeds make it unsafe for them to do so and get folks to shelters. Residents with any medical condition or transportation needs, there's also a phone number on the line, 813-272-5900 from HART, and you can schedule a pickup if you're unable to make it to one of those routes. Touch lightly, points of distribution. On the front end of a storm before it comes, we distribute sandbags to the public. On the back end of a storm, we may need to give out many commodities out to the public. When I was up in Hurricane Michael, again, and even after Hurricane Irma over at Al Lopez Park, we gave out water and food. So those are the type of operations that would be going on before a storm and after. For the public, we've echoed this since June 1st. We need everybody to make a plan, Update your hurricane kits now and stay informed by signing up to Alert Tampa. It's tampa.gov/Alert Tampa to sign up for that, or you can text the word Tampa Ready to 888-777, and you will receive emergency notifications directly from the city on anything that we're doing, evacuations, or any other information pertinent. We use that very heavily during COVID-19, but again, for a storm, that would be the same system we're using. One other new thing we put in place last year, we installed weather stations at 3 of our fire stations, as well as at Raymond James Stadium and USF. This provides 24/7 live weather information. We use it operationally for how we need to make decisions, but the public has access to all that information as well. You can go to hillsborough.weatherstem.com and get 24/7 live information from different locations throughout the city. Again, I touched on it before, but I just stress emergency notifications. The best way is to sign up for Alert Tampa, or again, we are very heavily in social media as well, and you can follow us at Alert Tampa on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. One other nice feature that we work closely with TPD and Stormwater on is the live street flood map. If you're not aware of that, tampa.gov/flood map, you can get live flood data. And this is even for our summer storms. As those get reported in by the public and then confirmed by Tampa Police Department, you can actually see where flooded streets are throughout the city and to know to avoid those areas. So just in closing, again, everybody, we know the tropics are active. We are in the height of the season. I just urge all our residents, get prepared now. There's beautiful days this weekend. We don't know what's going to precede us next week, but now is the perfect time to update your plans, know where you're going to go, know your evacuation zone, update your hurricane kits, and stay informed with us. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Councilman Goods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you go back to the slide where it talks about oxygen, dialysis, and those type of healthcare needs? The only problem I have with this, I believe that you need to be notifying the dialysis centers. Most folks that are on dialysis or oxygen do not, most of them are sick, and they don't do internet, they don't register, they won't be able to do that. So I would suggest moving forward, maybe the department and the county look at notifying the dialysis centers to make sure those folks who are in need know what they need to do and where to go. Also with oxygen as well. I think that's a viable thing, because in the midst of a storm, they're lost. Sometimes they have nobody anyway. So I would just ask that we look at possibly contacting those dials. We have about 4 or 5, about 3 in each Tampa. They're all over the place. So I think we need to go there and notify those centers, or have pamphlets or registry so they can be able to register and they won't be in the midst of a storm.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I just want to say thank you for the presentation. A lot of information in a short period of time, but how good you are in sending out notifications and communications. I get your emails all the time. The information comes through quickly. You did mention Alert Tampa. It's very, very beneficial. 888-777 Tampa Ready. You text that, you're on it. The flood map is very helpful because we don't want to see cars stuck in flooded roads, and the live flood maps will help people to prepare ahead of time. And then finally, Gaston and Hermine, never a Guido on that list, but I saw Lisa, my legislative aide, she gets one, and even Martin on there. But maybe one day I'll make the list. But in all seriousness, I appreciate it. Councilman Goods did touch on the special needs shelters, because again, when the power goes out and you need oxygen or you're on dialysis, whatever it is, seconds count. It's a very critical situation, but even sandbag locations that are scattered throughout the city strategically, that are easy access, so many things you touched on, but I'm glad to see that we are, just as it says, we're Tampa ready. And you also mentioned, the weather is great today. I saw no rain coming in. I don't know how the rest of the weekend's going to be, but this is the time to prepare, because we don't know what's coming. We're coming into the peak of the season. So thank you, sir. Thank you for all your work. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Mr. Guido.
You got 115 years.
Well, I just want to tell you why. Mr. Guido, never attach your name to a negative. You'll never be forgotten.
Hurricane Charlie.
Anyone else? Councilwoman Hurtak.
I want to say thank you for this excellent presentation, and if it's not already in our email inboxes, if you would pass it along, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for this. It was time. to let the citizens of Tampa know that we are prepared, we are ready, we do have plans of action. So I'd like to thank you and everybody involved that was putting on this presentation. I have one question to Chief Bennett.
Sir, yes,
Chief,
sir.
as this council has seen with a pandemic, that we may have to leave chambers to carry on city business. In the event that we have a Cat 3, Cat 4 hurricane, and downtown is flooded, and we cannot use this facility, is the city of Tampa prepared to have a place for council to meet so that we can continue city business as quick as possible?
Thank you, Chairman, for a great question to keep city business moving, just like we did in the pandemic. We were thankful to have a facility that can accommodate us that wasn't impacted by a natural hazard. So when it comes to continuity of government and continuity of operations, every month, the Emergency Management Office holds a monthly meeting of all the subcommittees. One of the prime subcommittees is the continuity of operations, continuity of government, which is spearheaded by the Technology and Innovation Department leadership. So yes, there is a myriad of whatever's left over for us to work in to run city government. And absent of that, in a city this size, we're going to find high and dry ground that is capable of either co-locating with other governments or standing up a government in tents if we have to. So yes, there will be the ability to do that. And one postscript to the special needs process, I worked on this during Irma, is that, and I'm very proud of our fire department in this aspect because they take a very proactive approach of going around and inspecting the assisted living and the skilled nursing facilities to make sure the generators are working. And so that's something the proactivity of our public safety groups do, not waiting for the storm, but go ahead and make sure that they're doing their generation and make sure those power grids are working on those local facilities. So I just wanted to add that to what John mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Chief. Councilman Vieira.
I'd like to invite Mr. Jay Johnson and Mr. Chris Tophill to come up, if y'all would. I wanted to invite these two very nice gentlemen who do a lot of good work in our community to talk about a Thanksgiving turkey drive that they wanted to speak about and whatnot. Mr. Johnson, along with Patricia Brown, leads up Rise Up for Peace, which advocates for victims of crime. And Mr. Hill is with United Bankers Jamboree and is a United States Marine who does a lot of work in the community. So I'll let you all speak on it. And they do a lot of work with law enforcement in the community. Go ahead, Jay.
Good morning. Johnny Johnson, Vice President of Rise Up for Peace. And with our ongoing initiative to bring resources to our community and our collaboration to bring unity back to our community, we partnered up with United Bikers Jamboree to host our first annual Thanksgiving basket giveaway and resource. And we got Chris Tophill here is who's going to be leading that initiative with the food drive, and he can explain more about it, what's going on.
Good morning, members of the chamber. Good morning, City Council. The United Bikers Jamboree, along with Rise Up for Peace, Visit Tampa Bay, and other community organizations, is planning to provide a turkey giveaway. Our goal is to feed 1,000 families in our community. During these times and during this environment, we know it's very hard to feed your families. We currently have a goal that we set, and we will achieve that goal. We want to take the holiday burden away from the families and allow them to be able to enjoy themselves and not worry about what meal they're going to be able to feed their families. Along with this program, we will be giving out blankets to keep the homeless and those that need as well. This initiative that we only can make happen with teamwork. And as you can see, we have a team here, and we will continue to go forward to make this happen.
And it's a continual effort to partner up. And we want to first of all say thank you, Councilman Lewis, for your unwavering support to Rise Up for Peace and other organizations that's trying to change the atmosphere in our community that's needed so very badly. And thank the City of Tampa Police Department as well for always standing hand in hand with us to change the atmosphere that we are experiencing right now in the community. And again, the initiative of behind the food, and we know a lot of people give out food boxes and donations during holiday time, but we want to do it with a little more dignity. We want to feed people what we would eat. So we also partnering up with local farmers and stuff so that we're giving families fresh food instead of boxed potatoes and hot milk. We want to give them fresh items inside the box so they can feel good about themselves during the holiday spirit instead of just going up getting the same old inside these boxes. We can change how people think and feel by treating them the same way that we would want to be treated. And again, the only way that it can be done is by unity and collaboration and to bring this community to a better place. So we're asking for y'all help to push it out, put it on any social media platform, any of your websites, so that our community can feel good about itself.
Councilman Pierre.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. So I brought y'all here so that people in the community could know, including some people in the audience. I see some folks with different civic organizations, et cetera. Whether you are a labor union, whether you're a business organization, whether you're a church or a house of worship, it would be great if y'all could support the great effort these wonderful individuals are doing. They really do God's work in our community, and I just, my hat is always off to all of y'all. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have a telephone number and or websites that you could give to people that may be watching at home or at work?
Yes, we do. The phone number, if you would like to be part of it as a vendor donator, even as a volunteer, would be 813-748-2977. That's 813-748-2977. And you can visit our website at www.unitedbikersjamboree.com.
Say that one more time.
Okay. It's www.unitedbikers.com. That's our
Thank you,
website.
gentlemen. Any comments or questions?
In addition to that,
Yes, please.
we'll be putting it on the city's website, the police website as well, advertising it on our social media, and putting forth a campaign in the East Tampa community, letting everybody know that we're going to have this event. The programs and initiatives that Jay and Patricia put on along with Top are very near and dear to us, and we're always looking for those opportunities to partner with these organizations to go out in the community. We appreciate their efforts because they always look to us for assistance, guidance, and they're helping to bridge the gap between the community and law enforcement. I've been a part of some of the operations or initiatives that they've put forward in the past, and they have tremendous support for them. They have a lofty goal that they set for themselves, but I'm confident that with all of our support that we can make it happen.
Perfect. And I've seen you out in the public doing a lot of these great things. Thank you for partnering up, and TPD for partnering with these two great men.
Thank you.
Thank you. You are welcome. Mr. Shelby, at this time, we're going to take public comment, but I'm going to need a motion to break with the norm because I would also like to have public comment on some of our workshop items. So if we're going to have public comment, it's either general public comment or public comment to a agenda item, but not both. We had discussed this, Mr. Shelby, that we can allow the public to make comment on each agenda item.
At the end.
At the end.
Right.
But either public comment or comment to the agenda item, not both. Meaning general public comment now.
General public comment now, but if somebody wants to speak to an item, they can do so.
After it's heard.
Or they can do it now? Is that what? I'm
No, just general public comment now.
Understood.
And after an agenda item, they can speak specifically to the agenda item.
Well, okay. And that's usually the way you usually run the workshops, is that correct? Okay.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take public comment. Can I get? Ms. Burton.
Yes, good morning, Connie Burton. I wish I could stay all day, but I can't. My comments this morning is that I would just like to get this board to get back on track on the resolution that you signed in 2020 talking about you understood the results of and impact of slavery, and how you, through the creation of a commission, would address the long-term impact of racism as it relates to all phases relating to Black. When we talk about employment, when we're talking about housing, how do this council plan on addressing that? And it can't simply by doing charitable work through organization. It cannot be. It has to be something that is profound, and it deals with the masses of Black people. As you talk about your agenda item in terms of stormwater, how will Black people be impacted by that? Is there a creation and a set aside that Black people will be able to become gainfully employed? So you wrote the resolution in 2020, and yet this community has not seen any movement. So we could have real liberty and justice for all if only you would act on that. If only you would act on ways in which our community can see justice from the beginning to the end. And I also strongly support the resolution to put forth an independent counsel. Let's don't be afraid of sunlight. Let's don't be afraid of people that would like to address long systemic problems, but do not have the political power or will or connection to do it. We believe that the citizen in this city has the ability and the maturity now to see, even after COVID, that disparities do exist. And if we, this council, this city government will move forward, we can come to having a more just society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chesnut, we just, Tampa, Florida, we just seen a good example of how African people get pimped. Any Black man standing in solidarity with the police is a snitch. Got Black people up here in the city council that just passed $1 billion budget and got Black people begging for turkeys and blankets and doing other kind of stupidness. Pay us our reparations, deal with reparations, and we would handle those little social problems ourselves. They won't even be around. Because I'm sure Bill Gates and all the other people and whosoever, and Tesla and the rest of them and Elon Musk, they're not worried about turkeys and blankets and all the other stupidness. It's stupid, it's ignorant. And it's a pimp game that y'all run on us, all this honorary stupidness, and you don't deal with the real issues. $1 billion budget, we are 26% of the population, we're deserving the $555 million of it, and we get nothing out of it. And y'all got people talking about Juneteenth and other kind of stupidness. Absolute stupidness. Plain and simple. Stop the pimp game, putting you on notice. You stand with the police, you're a snitch. Robert Johnson, January 28, 1934. James Calvert, Martin Chambers, Melvin Hare, Edgar Allan Kojak Price, Joseph Jonas. We're living in a white nationalist, white fascist society. The historical norm is to extract everything economical, financial, social, cultural, and personal from the oppressed and use those resources to benefit the ruling class or white society. Nothing has changed from 1400 to 1922. The conditions of African people remain the same. We're in the same boat, on the same plantation, on the same prison cell, the same master's house. African people are trained to beg our masters for any place in society, then peacefully wait to see what will happen. 622 years of begging and waiting. Every generation's quality of life decreases at an alarming rate. The generations of African that was forced to live on the plantation was probably better off than the Africans walking around right here in this city of Tampa, Florida in 2022, lost in a technologically advanced society that is trying to explore other planets. We Africans have to get the wisdom of exactly how slave politics work, how we're abused by a system that is designed to extract everything from the African man, the African woman, and the African child for white people's benefits. There's nothing historic or deplorable about putting human beings on buses and airplanes and relocating them to other places. That is simply an evolved continuation of the way white people deal with racial issues. They put millions of Africans on slave ships, made millions of native indigenous population get off their own land, made tens of thousands of Indians walk cross country in the most hostile environmental conditions. We need reparations for those wrongdoings. We need reparations today, not honorary speeches and Robert Johnson plaques in public places as a means of reminding white society how to treat Africans. We need solutions in our lifetime.
Thank you.
So if I want to speak to an agenda item, I wait until after it's already been voted on? Then I'd like to speak
Unless you
generally.
would like to make a general comment, now you can do one or the other.
Sure.
Wait,
No, not after it's voted, after it's heard. After it's heard.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just have
Mr. Shelby.
just a clarification. If somebody wants to speak to an agenda item during, they can do it now, but they won't have the opportunity to speak
do it.
again a second time.
That is correct.
I see. Okay. Is
All
that-
right then. Good morning, everyone. I don't know how to turn on the Elmo, but I wanted to
It'll turn itself on.
point to a document there. I want to talk a little bit about the Civilian Review Board. There's a couple of proposals on item agenda 5. One of them is to submit to the voters whether or not they want to have an independent attorney, and another one is whether they want the Civilian Review Board to be able to issue subpoenas.
Will you please give us your name? I apologize.
James Michael Shaw, Jr.
Thank you.
And in the city of Miami, the city of Key West, and Orange County, their civilian review boards have an independent attorney. In the city of Miami, Key West, Orange County, Broward County, and Miami-Dade County, their civilian review boards can issue subpoenas to civilians. There are no CRBs in the state that can issue a subpoena to police officers. That's not legal. And this CRB, even if an amendment were to pass to the charter that gave the CRB that power, they still would not be able to issue subpoenas to police officers, but they would be able to issue them to civilians who have evidence that the CRB would need to take a look at in order to reach a sound decision. So I want to remind everyone that this is not something new, or not something new that's being thrown into the deal. This was a discussion that was had back in 2021. The city attorney's office had given the advice to council that council can't give those authorities to the Civilian Review Board, the ability to issue subpoenas or an independent attorney. You'd have to amend the charter. And here's a couple of emails where this was acknowledged by members of city council that that city attorney's office was giving that advice. Was that the correct advice? I don't think so, and I know that some have charged that maybe a line was crossed between political advocacy and impartial legal advice. I know there's another agenda item to address that, item 6, and maybe that's something that needs to happen, but I know this much. We commissioned a poll, the ACLU of Florida commissioned a poll. 82% of those polled said that they wanted to submit these questions to a vote. You don't have to take a side on the question yourself today, but it would be wonderful if this council could do something that 82% of the voters wanted to do. This is a representative democracy, and maybe the way to put this issue to bed finally is to submit the question to the voters and be done with it. We've been coming to this city council for 7 years asking for these changes, and this is a way that we can submit the question to the voters can vote on it, and we'll have the answer, and it won't drag on another 7 years. So I'd like you to please consider submitting that question to the voters like 82% of the voters want you to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council. Rick Fueo, 1202 West Coral Street in Tampa, Florida. Now, with the clarification, I understand that I can speak generally to the agenda item, which is number 6, which has to do with some generalized consideration of potential charter review amendments. Like many of you up there, I had the pleasure of serving on the last time that this council had asked for a holistic review of the charter and considering various amendments. I think those of us who served on that, many of who are here, I feel like the underachiever in the room, understood that we debated and considered every item, and I thought with great detail, and made some ultimate decisions that not everyone agreed with, but we moved forward and sought to implement those. I thought at the end of that, we had said that it would be a good idea to consider revisiting that process in 5 years, maybe 10 years. And that if it was done again, it would be done in the same manner, in a holistic manner, because, and again, I'm speaking generally given the time limitations, but one of the things I recall with very precise memory is that any aspect of the charter that you change impacts many others. It's a holistic process and should be considered that way. And I would be worried about piecemeal changes that were done without having a separate charter review commission to consider it all. And I would also be worried about doing it 3 years out instead of waiting until at least sometime distill and consider some of the impact of the potential amendments, and that's all I had to add. Thank you for hearing me this morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council. I am James Judge. Thank you for hearing me this morning on this important matter. On behalf of more than 137,000 Republicans in the Tampa Bay area, including the city of Tampa, I stand before you as their nominee to represent Florida's 14th Congressional District. While this may be unusual for a federal candidate to get involved in local matters, I'm also a Tampa business owner. And I am doing so because I believe that there is an action that would set a dangerous precedent and become a much larger issue. The City Council is a strange and unnecessary proposition before it. A non-elected Citizens Review Board with zero investigative authority, which could very well have members a part of it with criminal convictions on their record, is attempting to gain the ability to have subpoena powers. Subpoena powers are something that are typically reserved for attorneys and law enforcement with the consent of a judge, and there is a system in place with checks and balances to prevent any wrongdoing, and should there be any wrongdoing, there are serious consequences. However, in this case, there would be no such system of checks and balances. This unelected board of private citizens could be able to demand at their discretion that private citizens and their homes turn over anything they desire: surveillance video, access to social media accounts, personal photos, their cell phones, and more. The scenario I presented may be outside of the intent of this body, but it is nevertheless a very real possibility should this move forward. It is a terrible idea for so many obvious reasons. First, it raises significant privacy concerns, and more importantly, it increases the likelihood of a violation of our rights protected and guaranteed by our Constitution and Bill of Rights, particularly the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment states, and I quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." The Citizens Review Board has no such authority. It has no investigative powers. According to Tampa.gov, the Citizens Review Board was formed to enhance trust between the Tampa Police Department and the community it serves by creating an unbiased panel of citizens to review completed disciplinary cases and issues of importance or interest to the community and the police department. Their purpose is to review completed disciplinary cases, not to start their own independent investigations. Those who are in favor of this will say that this is not what the CRB intends to do, and that they only plan to do it for police investigations. But we know from history this is a dangerous and slippery slope. If anything, the past 2.5 years have demonstrated that we need less government, not more of it. Who will fund and pay for the investigations they intend to pursue? None of this is necessary. We already have a series of checks and balances already in place. The Tampa Police Internal Affairs, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the State Attorney's Office, the FBI, and more all have the power and authority to conduct their own investigations, not to mention every citizen already has the right to request documents and conduct their own reviews through the Sunshine Act, and we also have the media. Yet none of this is allegedly working. What these folks are saying is that government is not working, so we need more government, and that's absolutely preposterous. This is something I would expect to see in communist China, not the United States of America. As a business owner here in Tampa and the Republican nominee for the House of Representatives in Florida's 14th Congressional District, I strongly condemn this effort, and I respectfully request for the City Council to prohibit this effort from moving forward. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you. If there is anyone else that is going to be speaking during this public comment, would you please form a line on my left, your right? Thank you. Proceed.
Good morning, Councilman Citro, Council. It's an honor to be standing here before you. It's also an honor to be standing in a room with so many of our leaders in law enforcement to be here. And as the son of a disabled retired policeman, it's an honor, and I thank them for their service and for your service. I'm Bob Rorlak. I'm the president and CEO of the Tampa Bay Chamber, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. The Tampa Bay Chamber has long supported and valued structure and stability and strong governance of the city of Tampa and the leadership work you all have done. In fact, our business community is able to thrive on that stability that we count on every day with you. The Tampa Bay Chamber has a similar track record of success due to our processes, procedures, and our foundation on good governance in our organization that our members and businesses in the region can depend on with us. In 2018, the Charter Review Commission concluded a comprehensive 10-month analysis of the city's 47-year-old charter and unanimously recommended 18 substantial amendments that were ultimately approved by City Council and then by the voters. The Tampa Bay Chamber is concerned that holding a City Council workshop today to review several amendments on the charter just a few years after the voters approved amendments at a regular order risks the spirit of the charter and sets the next deliberative review is only going to be in 2027. We encourage the council to follow your process that is established and set in place, and keep in mind that because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Carl.
I just want, Mr. Rohrlach, Mr. Rohrlach, I just want to clarify, and for disclosure, I'm a member, my company's a member of the Tampa Bay Chamber. But could you just clarify, were you, did the executive committee or the board vote to ask you to say this? Or were you just offering an opinion on?
The good governance is one of the foundations of our 10-year vision plan, and this falls within the guidance of good governance and our policy procedures.
Sorry to ask you, but did the executive committee or the board specifically vote to ask you not to recommend that we not pass charter amendments today?
We didn't spoke on this specifically, but as we've spoken before city and county before on issues that we believe fall within the good governance of our 10-year vision plan and our policy procedures, that's the guidance we're running.
Sorry to have to ask you that.
So it's been voted on before,
we
but
often
not
ask,
this specifically today.
Yeah, sorry to have to ask you that. We often ask organizations whether people are representing the organization or the individual.
Sure, okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Rodriguez, and I'm a member of the Tampa Bay Community Action Committee, and I'm here to say that I support the independent counsel's subpoena power of the CRB board, and I think that's something that a lot of people in the public would vote yes on. And you know, what was brought up about the CRB not being elected, I think maybe we should in the future think about it being elected. I think that's really important for the people to have power over the communities and who polices our communities, because we know, I'd like to remind everyone, the Department of Justice investigation into the crime-free housing program that was implemented by TPD, the people behind me here, where they were found guilty of unjustly kicking people out of their homes, or telling landlords to kick people out of their homes, even if the charges were dropped, which I think is like a really bad use of my money, personally. And once again, would like to remind them of the Biking While Black program that they implemented and is still in effect, whether they want to admit it or not, where 70% of the people pulled over for biking citations are Black in a city where it's 26.2%, has a Black population of 26.2%. So I think having a CRB, which actually has some power and can bring true transparency to the city, is very important, because we need investigation that is external to what's being happening, because it's obvious that they can't solve their own problems, so they need someone else to do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Simon Rowe. I'm speaking on behalf of Tampa Bay Community Action Committee to speak in favor of agenda item number 5, which would, the ordinance that would allow subpoena power and independent counsel to be on the ballot. Wholeheartedly support that. If it was on the ballot right now, I'd definitely vote yes on it. But we're not at that point yet. I'm basically here to say, we really want this opportunity here in Tampa to have a citizens review board that is capable of actually doing things. Because I know I'm fairly green when it comes to living here in Tampa. I've only gone to a couple of the citizens review board meetings, but no one goes. It's very intimidating. Honestly, there could be a lot of improvement for how it can actually get accountability for people in Tampa. I think that should be the goal here. It shouldn't exist as a public relations board that exists as an in-between between the Tampa Police Department and the community. The police should have to earn our trust, and right now they're not doing that. Hearing Chief of Police say Biking While Black is over, we fixed it, but literally on TPD's website, you can see that of the people pulled over this year on bikes, 70% of them were Black. There is still a racism issue here in the city of Tampa in this police department, and the CRB just doesn't have the power to do anything about that. we're not even asking them to do anything right now about specific cases. We just want them to have that ability. So people can get accountability here in Tampa, so we can have transparency, because why should we have trust in a police department that's so afraid of accountability, that misrepresents things? Like, they have not earned our trust. And not only has the ACLU survey shown that a lot of people would support a CRB having more like power, which is well within the law, as shown in other cities here in Florida. Like, this is well within the power of the Citizens Review Board to have. And not only was the ACLU survey showing like broad support for this, the CRB survey itself, or I think it was from the mayor, Irene Guy mentioned it during one of the meetings, that also showed support. So even if you dismiss the ACLU poll, you can't dismiss the city's poll. This is something that has a lot of broad support. Please put it on the ballot so we can have a decide. We in this hopefully democratic society can have a chance to vote on it. You know, let us decide, please.
Thank you.
Good morning, y'all. My name is David Jones. I'm a member of the Tampa Bay Community Action Committee, also speaking in favor of giving the CRB power, or putting power to subpoena on the March ballot. You know, this is a very interesting time for the meeting. Just today, we're seeing 14-year-old Andrew Joseph's family finally get their verdict in the case of a wrongful death at the hands of Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. A case that took 8 years for them to be able to take it to the courts. 8 years too long, if we're being honest. 8 years that shouldn't have had to happen, that family shouldn't have had to struggle for. And, you know, that's an unfortunate reality with policing and accountability in this country, in this state, in the city even, because of just like some of the interesting policing tactics that we have here. And that's not right. Being able to, you know, allow an independent body to actually investigate, to actually look over these cases is necessary, so that we don't have to have families struggling and suffering for years on years, asking, begging, and demanding justice. You know, and putting that on the ballot so that the city can vote on it is the least that can be done. You know, even if it's on the ballot, there is no guarantee that it will pass. The reality is that folks like the PBA, that folks like the excuse me, Sheriff's Office, that folks like the TPD proper and their spokespeople will like attack the bill, and that's just the reality. So, you know, passing it's even questionable, but the least that can be done is putting it up for the people to decide. It's putting it up for the people to decide. You know, there's been talk about democracy. There's been talk about how we don't want to make this a dictatorship or whatever. But, you know, the true way to get out of that is by leaving it to the people in terms of like amending the charter. You know, if it's going to make an actual tangible change that the people of Tampa want, that the, you know, citizens are willing to, you know, come out and fight for and keep demanding, then, you know, there's no reason to, you know, shoot it down for, to continue to shoot it down. So I guess just, you know, let the folks choose, let the folks vote. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Taylor Cook. I'm here with Tampa Bay Community Action Committee as well, and here speaking in favor of independent counsel and subpoena power. I think, like, regardless of how you guys feel or anybody in this room feels about it, I wholeheartedly agree it is up to the people to decide, the people that run this city, that make it run, provide coffee and the gas and everything else to make the city function as it does. I think that's the least that we can do, is let people vote on it, because I know there are plenty of people that live in neighborhoods like myself where the police block off the roads whenever they want, where they harass kids on bikes. I think it's fair to let people decide if they want police accountability or not, and I think this is the next step. When I think of subpoena power in the CRB, I wish it was actually a lot stronger, because I think of Jonas Joseph, who was shot over 125 times. I think of Dominique Mulkey, who was shot and killed for being hungry. not TPD, but I think of Andrew Joseph III, who was neglected. I think of Josiah Pinner, who was 15 when he was mowed down by an HCSO officer who was going 25 over the speed limit. I think of all those kids and the people that have lost their lives that could have lived rich and full lives without police murdering them in the streets. I think of my friends who still have scars from rubber bullets back in 2020. I think of the feeling of tear gas in my throat and how I couldn't eat for a week. I think of the kids off of a park on MLK who got tear gassed by a TPD. That's all that I think about when I think about police accountability. And I think having subpoena power would be the right step, an independent power. And it's not even for open cases, it's for closed cases that have already been investigated. So, and I don't even think that's strong enough, but I think it's a step in the right direction. But regardless of how you feel, I think if we want to have a democratic city, I also spoke on Tuesday about how I thought the budget process was undemocratic. I think this is one way to show us that this is a democratic city by letting the city vote on the subpoena power for the CRB. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Good morning. Andy Mates, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard. I'm here in my personal capacity as a concerned citizen about the integrity of the processes that have governed the city for a period of time. I know that there's a process that just happened in 2018 and one that I think continues to be in effect. And in my opinion, that process should be respected, and that process should be used to make significant changes. If that process is not fundamentally broken or doesn't need to address urgent issues, I urge each of you to understand why we're advocating for additional changes to a process that is already in place. We had Jeff Scott, the football coach from USF, at the Chamber Board meeting this morning, and he was talking about the very almost beating the Florida Gators. And he had a great line. He said, trust the process, don't rush the process. So I encourage you all to trust the process and not rush the process. Thank you for the time to be with here today. Appreciate y'all's service.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers that would like to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, I believe we have one person online. Ms. Pointer, are you there? I'm sorry? Okay. Then let's start with our agenda items. Agenda item number 2, file number CM 22-77279.
Good morning, Chairman, City Council, Brad Baird, Deputy Administrator of Infrastructure. If I could get a presentation pulled up on Southeast Seminole Heights Flooding Relief Project. Thank you very much. So first, the agenda, which is the status update, will include continuing communication improvements, Florida Avenue closure, West Crest Avenue restoration, and the upcoming community meeting next week. Let's see if I can get that to advance. First, I would like to share with City Council the project structure because it is key to communications on the project site. Jeff Nelson is the company president and owner, and the buck stops with him. I have him here in the audience today. If Jeff, you would raise your hand. Then the overall construction, what is happening in the field, falls under the company's general superintendent. His name is Joe Hamilton. Then the 2 project superintendents shown in orange are responsible for the construction crews, and they report to Joe. Excuse me. And then Will Stock is the project manager that reports directly to Jeff, just like Joe does, who tracks the scheduling, the numerous administrative functions, and the communications on the project. So he is over the firm Dialogue that many of you have been working with on the communications on the project. The communications and responsiveness on this project start in the trench. I think I said that 2 weeks ago, last time, but you got to say what you're going to do and then do what you said. It's really that simple. So that's why the 2 project superintendents shown here are new. The previous ones were not meeting Nelson's or the city standards. So the estimated timeframes set an expectation for the public, and obviously when those timeframes are missed and the team falls short, that leads to frustration and aggravation. And I'm sorry, I was. It's important to note that the overall project is ahead of schedule by about 4 months. This is a long project of 3 years. However, the timeframes communicated on individual streets were very optimistic. And the new project supervisors are making more realistic estimates and then delivering on those promises. So next, I'd like to talk about the improved site appearance and the complaints we received weeks ago about the trash. We made significant improvements in this area. They've cleaned up and sodded along River Boulevard. We know the residents were happy with that. They've given us that feedback. Crews cleaned up along Crest and Central. Nelson recently banned plastic water bottles from its crews and its regular sub-consultants and provided them with aluminum water bottles to be used. And Mr. Nelson has received 100 of those bottles and has 250 more on order. So we can share them with more than just the workers if some of the residents and businesses would like those. We've added 5-gallon buckets to the site for trash and continue those twice-a-day trash sweeps. And this next one is a big one. I've talked to at least one of you about this, and that is we've approved the use of the existing Rome yard for staging and storing of the large items, the large stormwater pipe and structures. The manufacturers of these items are forcing early deliveries because of the supply chain. So this is kind of the reverse of what you've been hearing on the supply chain, which would mean that they would have to sit in the right-of-way for 3 to 12 months. And that's just unacceptable, and especially on Central Avenue where they're creating site obstructions. So the crews have already started moving some of those stored materials to the Rome yard, and going forward, they will store even more of those materials there. Okay, next, talk about the Florida Avenue closure. Unfortunately, the Florida Avenue closure did have to be extended to October 7th. It's large-scale, complicated works, taking more time than we anticipated. The sequence of operation to install stormwater inlets, the water main, to ensure the water main is safe for drinking before we put it in service, along with some of the recent rains, it had to be pushed out. The good news is the communications team jumped on that really quickly. They posted an alert to the project's website on September 15th. These go to all the e-subscribers, hand-delivered flyers to the businesses on the 16th. Those that weren't open, they received a phone call or an email. We emailed the neighborhood associations on the 16th so they could share with their membership. It created social posts for the city's use on Twitter and Nextdoor. We added this business open sign that you see here on the south end of the project, and the 2 flaggers that were added to the south side to get pedestrians and bicyclists in and out, as well as patrons to the business. Next slide. To continue on the Let's see here. Probably there's for that. Continue on the Florida Avenue closure. It's scheduled to be underground work to be complete by tomorrow. Crews began rebuilding the road to the south this week and will continue next week. Paving should occur the week of October 3rd, so the road could be reopened by the end of the week, which is October 7th. We are shooting to beat that, and it looks like we have an outside chance of beating that date, which would be good. To over-deliver in this case. In addition to that, we have heard residents' concerns about speeding on North Highland. This has been an issue of late. So the project team has added an off-duty officer positioned at Highland and West Haya Street during the morning and afternoon rush hours to calm traffic. So let's talk about West Crest restoration. First, the 300 block. These are the residents that have probably endured the most construction toward the river. The 2 grand oak trees on the south side have been removed. This took longer than expected. The first layer of the road base has been installed on this block. Curb and gutter is scheduled to be installed on the south side today and on the north side tomorrow. The first layer of asphalt should go down by the end of next week. So, and door hangers were distributed Wednesday morning on the 300 block to keep all homeowners aware of the slight delay. So, you know, once again, we're communicating. So the 100 and 200 blocks, which are toward Florida Avenue, the construction continues. The box culvert has been installed to Florida Avenue to tie in at that location. A sanitary sewer crew will be out on Monday to TB the sanitary mains so adjustments can be made as needed. Immediately following the sanitary adjustments, crews will start building the roadway. And then finally, we expect the first layer of asphalt on the 100 and 200 blocks to be somewhere toward late October, beginning November. So the team's focus on communications continues to be laser sharp and robust. Since last week, and this is just since last week, posted 4 web alerts that went to the e-subscribers list. Our meeting this morning with the association presidents, at least 2 out of 3. We hope to get the 3rd one. Emailed local schools, Hart, Avenue Lofts regarding the Florida Avenue closure extension. Distributed an update to residents on Caracas because this area is moving slower than expected. We did knock on each door and offer personal updates on Monday. So we've also been planning a community meeting, which is scheduled for Thursday, September 29th at 6 p.m. in Hillsborough High School's auditorium. Nelson will provide a project update and take questions and comments for those in the audience. You're invited to attend if you would like. This meeting has been noticed by direct mail postcard to about 1,300 addresses in the project area. That we hand-delivered postcards to businesses in the area that may lease space that may not be on the tax rolls. We started running a social post on Nextdoor and provided those posts to the civic and neighborhood associations so they could publicize to their members. And then finally, we're just continuing to improve where the city staff overall is pleased with the changes that have happened over the last month. Under the new project supervisors. This image shows progress on Central Avenue between Hillsborough and Osborne. Restoration on Central is more detailed due to all the mobility improvements on Central. And we will have a more detailed schedule, in future updates. On the road next week at our community meeting, we will have an update on Central. And this concludes my presentation. I'll open it up for questions.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Thank you so much for this update, and I want to say the biggest kudos I can give to you is that this morning when I asked Old Seminole Heights President Tim Keyports how it's going, he said, in a meeting right now, things are going well. Or I don't know that he used quite the word well, but he said things are going in a good direction, and I really appreciate that. I specifically appreciate the door-to-door communication with residents on Caracas, and I request that maybe before the Hillsborough High meeting, if you could do the same with Central, that would be wonderful. I do absolutely appreciate, I have joined the email list, I've gotten all the emails. I appreciate the focus on actually reaching out to the community members individually who are most impacted, the business owners for Florida, when you went individually to Crest, when you went individually to Caracas. I think that keeping those things in mind for areas you're going to work on in the future is great. I appreciate yours and Nelson's willingness to turn it around. I really appreciate this, and I know we'll stay in contact. But I appreciate the change and the focus on individual communication. I think that goes a long way. And I think we'll see, if we have that individual communication along Central, I think we'll see a difference at this meeting, which is important, but I think we'll see a difference. So thank you for continually working on this. Community will let me know if it's not working. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and we do commit to going door to door on Central.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I just want to say thank you. Great presentation. My questions were answered because you provided the information in the slides. One of the biggest complaints was the trash that was left, but you did say and have shown already that there is a twice-a-day sweep, the banning of plastic bottles. One gentleman sent me pictures just last week with the headline on the email, "Here we go again," and photos of trash, but you are addressing it. And I responded to him saying, I'm going to reach out to the contractor. We'll talk to the city. And then he goes, well, and then what? Well, here's the answer. And then what? The twice-a-day sweeping, the 5-gallon trash receptacles, the banning of plastic bottles. I don't know how much more responsive you could be, you and the contractor. Mr. Stock has been very responsive. I forward emails and complaints to him, and he always responds. I appreciate that. But most importantly, and I know a lot of businesses are being affected right now in Florida, I appreciate the Seminole Heights community, as they always do. They come together. I believe it was last night, Ladies of the Heights, which is several thousand members, got together at the Independent, supporting one business. And that's just one of several there. But everybody's doing their part and understanding that, we're doing this, and we're going to be glad that we're doing this once it's completed and we see the benefits. And also, October 7th can't come soon enough. I believe that's the date that the street reopens. Crest, as you mentioned already, the final installations, the curbs, then, Florida gets paved. Again, we're going to be grateful that we did this. I know that this is very tough now, but again, I appreciate you being so responsive and for coming today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman Hurtak, you're
It's
recognized.
Ladies of the Heights Happy Hour, or Ladies Heights Happy Hour, not Ladies of the Heights. But it is wonderful, and I was there last night, and it was a really, it was, as Councilman Maniscalco said, a wonderful, the community does come out, and they do a great job. Yeah. And the only other thing I ask is if I could get a copy of this, and it could be passed along to the presidents of the associations as well. Thank you.
We will do that. Thank you.
Ms. Barrett, I'd like to thank you for this report and letting the community know, the citizens know, when they come to us, we go straight to staff, and staff gets things done. Thank you very much for this report.
Thank you. All right.
Agenda item number 3. Mr. B-Day and Whit Reamer, you're going to be here, and Miss Abby Feely. Mr. B-Day, if I may, do you want to open 3 and 4 together?
Sure thing. Morning, Council. Vic B-Day, Director of the Mobility Department. We're here to address items 3 and 4. This will be a joint presentation. Item 3 is related to the motion made for understanding what we're doing with our garages and lots relative to EV charging. Item 4 is more of a policy item requested by council to address how are we going to implement policies relative to EV charging on private property. We do have a composite presentation. Whit will start us off, and then followed by me speaking about what we're doing with our lots and garages, and Abby will close us out on the policy elements. So with that, I'll call upon Whit to start us.
Good morning, council. Good morning, members of the public. Whit Raymer, Sustainability and Resilience Officer. So we're trying something a little new here with a multi-part presentation with some cross-department collaboration. And I've been asked to kind of tee up the general EV state of play here in the city, and then these departments will go into more specifics about the motions that were requested. So can we go to the third slide? That's EV readiness background. So I just want to start by providing a little bit of framework about how we think about EVs and some food for your thought as you consider these policy implications. Next slide, please. So Florida has the second most registered electric vehicles in the country. Actually, I was double checking these numbers this morning. The 58,000 numbers is inaccurate. We actually have 95,000 registered electric vehicles. That's the second highest behind California, which has close to 600,000 electric vehicles. So we've got a lot, but as you'll see in a moment, as a proportion of the total vehicles in the state, it still hovers around just 1%. Right now, the Florida does have enough slow chargers and fast chargers to meet our needs till 2025. But after that, we believe that the charging network is going to have to be increased to meet future demand. A couple of quick points on some funding for infrastructure that will be coming down the pipe. The IIJA, as it's referred to, the colloquial IIJA, which is the federal infrastructure bill that was passed last November, we expect around $200 million of that to come to electric charging infrastructure along federal highways. The IIJA made a specific focus through the Department of Transportation to deploy their money and that infrastructure along federal highways. That was kind of the federal purview of that bill vis-a-vis electric charging infrastructure. And through a separate funding stream, the settlement with Volkswagen due to their diesel emission scandal, there's another $166 million allocated to the state of Florida, and we expect 34 fast charging stations out of that bucket of funding. Next slide, please. So while 95,000 as a raw number is a lot of vehicles, proportionate to all vehicle sales in the state of Florida, we still hover around 1 to 2% of all electric vehicle sales, all vehicle sales being electric. That number is rising, but still we think that's an important context to provide when setting policy on these issues. Next slide, please. The number of vehicles that are available, electric vehicles that are available, is increasing. Right now, there's about 57 models, and we expect that number to almost double by the year 2025, making the consumer choices more available. I know I was looking for an electric vehicle a couple of weeks ago for our family, and it's still tough to find not only one because of the supply chain, but one that meets a multitude of family needs. Most manufacturers that you see at the top here have set goals for at least half of their manufacturing to be electric by 2030 or 2035. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the actual terminology and policy. Next slide, please. So there are generally three types of EV policies when it comes to mandating infrastructure. There's EV ready, EV capable, and EV installed. For the purposes of this presentation today and for the city of Tampa, we wanted to focus on EV capable and EV installed. EV capable simply is a definition that
requires the basic infrastructure for electric vehicle charging stations to be installed in the future. So that includes breaker space, conduit, and the type of the proper connections. That is kind of one of the best money-saving approaches that you can provide, because going and tearing up parking lots and sidewalks and utilities after the fact can be very expensive. So having that conduit in place is really important. The second one is EV installed that we'll talk about, and that's having the full charger available and ready for use. The one that kind of falls in the middle, it just requires some of the electric infrastructure to be placed into the conduit and for the plug out to be there, but there's no actual station. So we don't feel that's necessarily an appropriate step for the city to consider at this point in time. We think looking at the conduit and the breaker box and then the full charger is where we should focus. Next slide, please. This is a slide that just depicts the three types of charging stations that are available. Level 1 chargers are your traditional 120 volt that you can plug into your wall in your garage, in your house. Level 2 are 240 volts. Those are available in the city garages right now. And then level 3 fast chargers, those are the superchargers that are extraordinarily expensive to install, but can charge a vehicle fully in about 20 minutes. And generally those are associated with the Tesla supercharging stations. Next slide. So we've got a couple of things that we're already doing here in the city. The Downtown Partnership issued a report in March of 2021 that surveyed current EV charging in the downtown area. The Growth and Development Management team, Abby's team, is going to be here today presenting on some potential policies for the city to consider changing ordinance. FDOT presented a really informative EV master plan. In fact, the Florida Department of Transportation is seen as really on the forefront out of every single state in terms of embracing and planning for EV readiness. So we work closely with FDOT, and their master plan has some really, really good information, which we actually use for this presentation today. We are members of Drive Electric Florida as a city, and we were looking at trying to do a Drive Electric event in 2 weeks from now. Unfortunately, I don't think we were able to pull off all of the logistics for that, but we're already laying the groundwork to showcase a Drive Electric event next year in the city. And Vic's going to talk about city parking garages and other facilities. And I did want to, next slide please, point out real quick that we like to lead by example here in the city of Tampa. And I checked this morning, we have 35 fully electric vehicles in the city of Tampa with plans to purchase at least 10 additional ones every year. And we have 14 city of Tampa municipal vehicle charging stations. Of course, at our new Hannah Avenue complex, we'll have charging stations and electric vehicle readiness, both for the private car charging and for the public. And that's being driven in part due to our leadership, but also because we're seeking LEED certification for that building. And that was one of the requirements and credits that we'll be seeking. With that, unless you have any questions for me specifically, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bide.
Councilman Miranda.
I just want to say thank you for this fine presentation, and it's a slow process. It's not going to happen overnight, but you see the automakers from 2030 already say they're going to have a certain percent. There's 2 or 3 of them that are doing that, and mostly of them don't go past 2035, even though some are saying 2040. However, there's something to be aware of in my mind. It's still, when you look at the charging stations, by their greed, it's not like a gas station. You can take your car, automobile that drives on a regular engine, any gas station, you can fuel up. The problem with this, we have enough charging stations, but by greed, they have different types of plug-in for only certain cars, which if we didn't have that, we'd right now be way ahead of the curve. But by greed, I'm going to use that word again, they want to steer you to only their kind of automobile that they make, and that's a shame. But thank you for what you do. Does solar do anything? Can solar charge one of these charging stations or not? I don't really know. And if it is, how many panels does it take?
Yeah, we look at several different options of these charging stations. There are solar options. There are portable containerized ships that can be moved for during emergency purposes. Following the presentation this morning from Mr. Antipassis, electric vehicle charging during evacuations is always a concern and consideration. So I think the process is evolving on the types of charging stations and the locations. I think you bring up another important point with regards to solar. Right now, about 42% of the city's greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector. And so moving towards EVs will help significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We also want to deploy solar energy to accompany that. But I think a really important thing is an electric vehicle is still a vehicle, and it's still often driven by one person. And so while the city is really focused on electric vehicles and supporting this transition, which is an interesting role to be in, right? Because you mentioned that gas stations are privately operated, and what is the city's role really for this deployment of EV infrastructure? It's still something I think we're wrestling with, and that's what we're here to talk about today. But I think just as equally important is focusing on all types of transit options. And so EV is important, but still it's a car on the road that adds to congestion. And so we are really trying to think about holistic ways to approach our transportation and mobility network. And I just wanted to add that perspective.
Well, again, thank you. One other thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
There are certain parking garages that have some of these stations, but the problem is they're full by the same cars every day, and they don't even move. They just stay there the whole day. Is there something that can be done to facilitate other people charging? My electric car is parked because I just want to park it. I get it now in October. I drive it only 6 months a year. So what I'm saying is that in the charging garages that we have, when you drive by, you see the same cars for the whole day. And that's, I think, maybe that's changed since the last time I've been in that garage. But it should be a change to that because it's not right for them, unless they're paying double or triple the parking fee. I don't know.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Bidet during his presentation on rules that they'll develop for the chargers.
Councilman Carlson.
3 quick questions. I'll throw them out, and then you can answer them if you want. The first question is there anything we need to do to change the regulations about the size of parking spaces? I'm lucky out here, my colleague who has a beautiful electric car, he happens to have a really small one, but it sticks out on the side. And so the one question is there, if somebody has like an electric SUV or the larger ones, are we going to need to change the parking regulations because these things are sticking out? Number 2 is with the track record of the departments and maintenance, is there any benefit or additional cost related to having these cars? And then the third question is, for anybody who's listening who's thinking about buying a car and probably can't find them, do you think that there's any, just from your own experience looking at this, do you think there's any big leap in technology coming in the next couple of years, or is it just going to be steady incremental growth?
Sure, thanks. Great set of questions. I'm going to defer to Mr. Bidet on the size of the parking spots. On maintenance, I can report that our maintenance department, our fleets, and they're part of, I think, our unions, they absolutely love these things, not because it's less work, but because they're not only getting to some new training on the electric vehicles, but the maintenance on these for the city fleet vehicles is very, very low. And I could probably get some numbers on exactly how much more or less time they see these vehicles. I know they still have their annual or biannual maintenance schedules, but they're often in the shop and out very, very quickly. So I think most departments have been very receptive on the maintenance side. There's much lower maintenance costs than overhead. On being able to find a car, I do think the technology is evolving. I think it's probably safe to go with an EV vehicle right now. I would say batteries for large-scale other applications, like adding them in addition to solar on your house, is probably we're probably not quite there on return on investment yet. But I do think if you're in the market for an EV, either a new one or, get this, with the new Inflation Reduction Act, there are now tax credits available even for buying used electric vehicles. So that's really, hopefully, that financial incentive will be taken up by folks in the market for an EV.
Mr. Rimmer, I'm going to make some statements, and then I'll save most of my questions for Mr. Bidet in his presentation. FDOT has said that they're not in the business of charging vehicles. And I understand that because they don't want to put charging stations in their rest areas, because much like the old oases that they used to have along the Florida Turnpike, the surrounding cities would complain and say, wait a second, you're taking business away from us. People getting off the interstates and going into. But it's that trip that I have to be cautious about, where I leave Tampa and maybe go to Orlando or go to Vero Beach or go down to Miami, that I have to have that charging intermittent, and that's going to be for the unincorporated counties to really dictate. My question here is, this phone has evolved 10 times within the last 10 years. Charging stations are going to evolve. Now the big thing is actually on top of the pavement, underneath the car, where all you have to do is pull in. You don't even have to plug in. So I am understanding your point. We have to be very cautious now, but it is definitely needed, and there has to be some sort of public-private partnership. Because although we do need charging stations, again, the City of Tampa might not be in the business of charging cars. So that's where that public-private has to come in. Solar, it will work, but only with battery backup. We can collect the energy from the sun, put it into the battery, and plug it in. Whit, I thank you very, very much for being the resiliency director for our city. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Whit. Next slide, please. So I'll start by addressing some of the questions that Whit kindly deferred to me. So the first one was relative to the size of parking spots. And our garages and lots currently accommodate large trucks, large SUVs. Should the form factor be driven by the technology, electric, hydrogen, whatever it may be, we will adapt to that. But currently, other than specific known constraints, we don't have that challenge yet. But if we do, we will be nimble and we will address that. A quick note on the bipartisan infrastructure law that Whit mentioned and the funding that is being available and how it relates to the EV master plan that FDOT has. So a condition of the bipartisan infrastructure law through the DOE for NEVI, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, requires that states seeking funding for electric vehicle charging develop their own EV master plan. So our coordination through Drive Electric Florida was to work with the state to develop this electric vehicle master plan. So to that end, we have been following the policy and the practice. This electric vehicle master plan does address business models and what the different business models are. These aren't fleshed out because they aren't currently available, but it looks into what the research suggests. And those business models could be private partnerships, and that's what the state is looking at right now to facilitate building this infrastructure along highways, but to have it operated by private partners. That's something we have looked into as well. We've, in fact, for both on-street and off-street, we've talked to several EV vendors. And what we have gleaned thus far is the market isn't mature enough for that sort of a private partnership for the city to enter into because it has much more upfront costs than us installing our own chargers in the short run. And once we reach end of life for those chargers, we'll of course examine what other opportunities commercially are available for partnerships. There's a touch point on other technologies. So alternate to EV, there's hydrogen, but again, that's less feasible than EVs at this time. So electric vehicle technologies are the current viable product moving forward. And then I'd like to highlight two things. There's the supply chain or the availability of EV technology. That's one factor that is driving how fast we can scale. The other is the grid itself. So if we even had 10% market penetration of EVs today, our grid would not be able to handle, much less as you go to states north of Florida. So while we do have encouraging growth in EVs, currently we're at about 1%. The EV master plan did a lot of literature review, but there are other sources as well. And every indication is, at best, we'll be at 10% market penetration by 2030. But it's not known whether the electric infrastructure will catch up, because vehicles alone or cars alone are not the only things that will get electrified. So will short-haul aircraft, so will other devices that are powered currently by gasoline. So these are factors to consider. But having said that, next slide, please. Oh, previous slide, sorry. So currently we have 10 chargers across our garages that is listed on the left side. We can charge up to 20 vehicles at a time. Unfortunately, more than half of these chargers currently are not working because our vendor is in the process of upgrades, and that's taking some time. We have budgeted to double the current inventory of chargers that we have, and we're open to adding even more through the next fiscal year, FY23, as needed. Again, we're open to being nimble and following demand. Our current chargers have high demand. So to that end, we've allocated funding. We're looking at installing 20 plus EV charging stations, 40 ports through the next year. And we're initially focusing on garages and surface lots. We're in discussions with different vendors to explore on-street charging opportunities as well. It would be most viable for on-street charging to be fast charging. Those fast chargers are costlier, in the $20,000 range. And so commercially, any partnerships are not viable at this point, but we continue to monitor opportunities to do that. As far as policy relative to some of the items that were mentioned, so dwell time penalties, for example. So if there are cars that are charged past a certain time limit and they still sit there, not allowing opportunities for somebody else to come and charge, that would be a Chapter 15 addition. We're looking at making those code changes. We would want to correlate them with addition or expansion of our charging capacity. The other is a charge fee or a rate per kilowatt hour. And that's part of our discovery in working with different vendors and understanding the state of the practice. And that would be another forthcoming update to Chapter 15 as well. And then finally, a per session connection fee. This will likely be prevalent whether it's private or public EV charging facilities to charge by session. So that would also require a Chapter 15 code update that we're looking at. And again, these code updates would likely happen as we expand our charging infrastructure. So at this point, this is what I have. Abby will be presenting the policy implications of this. I'll be happy to take any questions on our lots or garages. Thank you.
Vic, I was just looking around. When did, you good?
Yeah, I like gas. I like gas.
That's one of 7. We got 2 of 7 that like electrical cars. And I think this is a discussion that needs to be had. When is the city going to start charging in the parking garages for electrical charging?
So once we double our current chargers, that will include the charging component as well. Charging as in charging money for charging vehicles.
Is there going to be some sort of app by the vendor that will say your car is charged, you got to move out of that parking space?
At this time, we do not know that, but that is something we're working towards.
Because to Councilman Miranda's points, there's plenty of times when I went into public parking and the same car was there 4 or 5 hours later, and I know you can darn well get a charge in 4 or 5 hours.
Right. No, that's a very good point, and that's why we mentioned the dwell time penalty. And that penalty or that code update would best be complementary to that technology being available. So that's why we look at what's viable from expanding our current charging capacity and bring code changes at the same time.
If the city of Tampa is going to make it viable for all income levels, these chargers will be placed in other places besides places like Hyde Park or downtown, they will be in other communities as well. There's
Correct.
plans for that.
Yes. Again, we'll track demand and expand it to all the areas where we do have the ability to provide the parking enterprise. But beyond that, to Whit's point, particularly for low-income areas, currently our transportation costs in our region as a percentage of our household income are among the highest in the nation. It's almost a quarter of the area median income budget. And that's very high, and that's compared to 10 to 11% in, say, New York City, or the average being 18%. So if we're really looking at what is best for the community from an income standpoint, that's where our focus is going to be on more transit, electric transit, certainly. Those would also be EVs down the road, and first mile, last mile opportunities, and working with our planning folks to bring services closer to neighborhoods to reduce those trip lengths. Because even today, 25% of all trips are under 2 miles.
Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you said, and it's all factual. I think you're going to see some real changes in the electric vehicle components. First of all, we're not integrated. We're segregated by different things and different idealism and different inventions. There are cars now in other countries that cost less than, with a base at 45,000 minus 7,500, that'll give you 450 miles, and they are gorgeous. They look like the Big T, and this one here, more likely from what I heard, can outperform those at half the cost. However, I think that's going to happen. So when we wait a little longer, I think the prices of them are going to come down. It's due to the batteries. And every week there's a new battery coming out of some sort that's made with different things so that the environment won't be as hurt as it has in the past. And they're making all these changes to come up with a component. You mentioned something that I think is going to take over the electric car, and that's hydrogen. When Toyota, the largest car maker in the world, has been hesitant to some degree in going straight electric, they already have a component with a hydrogen car. So when that cost is brought down to something, you can charge a semi, which takes less than a minute or 2 minutes, from here to New York without making one stop and carrying its load on hydrogen. So these are the things that are coming. And I think the batteries are also going to improve, where you can make a trip for 400 miles without charging, without ever fear that you're going to run out of energy. The one that I have, you can go 238, I say 240. But there's others coming out right now that go 300, 310, 340 with no problem. So you look at something as a one-way, how far can you go, and you feel great. However, when you look at that needle and you see that you're down to 12 miles, and you don't know the charging thing, it's 8 miles away, you say, am I going to make it or not? Because everything is different in the car. And these are the things that are hesitant on the public side of doing those things. But once they catch on, and if you want speed, which I don't understand why you make a car that goes, a quarter of a mile in 1.9 seconds. You can't do that in a road, so why make it? It's a selling point. Everybody wants to go fast. But the thing is that these cars really have a pickup, and they really move fast, and they pop your neck when you hit it. And these are things that the TPD, you're going to see them, but you're not going to hear them. So then the next question is, what are we doing for public safety so people understand that there's a car coming? Because you can't hear them. You just don't hear them.
Those are good questions. I mean, these are challenges nationally that are being looked at from a policy
Thank you very much.
standpoint.
To your point, Councilman Miranda, there is an electrical vehicle out there that will go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
Well, you keep driving, and I'm not.
I'll stick with my little small one. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council. Abby Feely, Deputy Administrator, Development and Growth Management. I want to talk to you just a little bit on the policy side of this and wrap up our presentation this morning. It's been a really awesome opportunity to work with both Whit and Vic and, look at this from a very integrated policy standpoint. The Land Development Code, currently Chapter 27, does not currently require the provision of EV parking spaces as part of a project's parking requirements. that includes either EV ready or EV installed spaces. The motion that was made related to this topic asked us to look at the city of Orlando, Coral Gables, and the city of St. Petersburg, and I do have some tables for you on that in just a moment. The preliminary recommendations we'll talk about for City Council to consider this morning, and then if we were to proceed with code changes, those would go into our January cycle. So in relation to the city of Orlando, the next slide, they do also look at EV capable and EV installed, and they require 20% for affordable housing, affordable multifamily housing projects, general multifamily, hotel, and in all of their parking structures. And then for non-resi, they use 10% EV capable and 10% for industrial, and that's based on their required employee spaces. So that's EV capable, that's what Vic showed you at the beginning. That's really the stub out, that's the infrastructure, it is the most costly, and when you're building a project, that's the time to do it, so that you're not then ripping things up and trying to go back. These do function, in addition for the presentation today, I've been meeting with JC, from the building official standpoint and what this means in terms of permits, and these are put on separate systems than the building itself. They do also have a small percentage of EV installed, and those kick in once you get to certain threshold number of spaces, and you can see those there. Next slide, please. Coral Gables started out with an original code and then revised the code. They started out with a 20 space trigger and had percentages, and that was for all projects excluding single-family residential, duplexes, and townhomes. So anything multifamily and any non-resi, those were their requirements. So they started at 2% per 20 spaces installed, 3% per 20 spaces ready, and 15% per 20 spaces capable. And now they have moved to a more aggressive standards, and that is this is now based on 10, any project with 10 spaces or more, and that's 5% installed, 15% ready, 20% capable, and then you have to sleeve out everything that's left. So that's kind of the other extreme to the spectrum. Next slide. This is St. Petersburg. City of St. Pete right now, only if you have a parking garage. So if you have a parking garage associated with your project, then they have an EV ready standard of 15% for residential that has a parking garage, 20% EV ready for non-residential that has a parking structure. And then they do have an EVSE ready for the residential, and they have an EVSE installed for the non-residential. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. At this time, we have a couple of recommendations for your consideration, then I'll open it up to your discussion and direction on how you'd proceed, how you'd like to proceed with this topic. We would suggest amending our definitions in our land development code to ensure that we have both an EV capable and an EV installed definition, which the code currently doesn't have. And then we would make a recommendation that for new development over 50 spaces, that we would require 5% be EV capable. So on a 100 space project, that's going to give you 5 spaces that would be EV capable, and then that would allow for the market to drive when those chargers would in fact go into play. So that concludes our presentation this morning related to the policy aspect. I'm open for discussion and any questions and direction that you may like to make in relation to the land development code and how you'd like to move forward.
Any comments or questions? Any comments or questions?
I don't have any.
Okay. Would anybody like to make any motions? Thank you. I'm handing the gavel to you. Ms. Feely, I am liking what I'm seeing here. I'd like to be a little bit more aggressive, but I'm going to ask your direction to go ahead and proceed with the staff recommendations. You're not having any recommendations now for on-street parking chargers?
This is only for private property. Right now, the public realm and the right-of-way really falls under the jurisdiction of mobility. So this would not be on the streets. This would be in the new development that our city sees with 50 spaces or more.
Then, Ms. Feely, I would like for you to go ahead and proceed with your
I'll second that.
staff recommendations. And I'm hoping that Vic can return to us sometime in the future. I'll make a motion later to talk about on-street parking.
We have a motion from Chairman Citro. We have a second from Councilman Miranda. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Sorry if I missed this, but does it only apply to new applications, or is it apply to?
This is for only new development.
Just
Yes,
to,
sir.
just to make sure we don't scare anybody out there. Okay,
Correct.
We have a motion from Chairman Citro, second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Goods.
for a personal privilege, before we get to these next items, you know, there,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, forgive me, but did you want to, if you're going to do something other than what the subject is, did you want to make sure there's any,
I will make the motion at the end.
no, for public comment?
Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment?
Okay, thank you, sir.
No, that, I was saying that most of the people here are probably not for EV charging. And I was talking to our clerk earlier, and we only have one person that wants to call in and make a, please, Councilman Goods, proceed.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I look at the next items on the agenda, I'm kind of upset a little bit. You know, this council had made provisions to have a special call meeting to deal with all charter issues. It is going on 11 o'clock. I have an issue that we had turkeys on here, we had the emergency management, we had EVs, which are all good items, but in the wrong place. We had set a time schedule. We had an appointed person to do a workshop that we apparently were paying to do, and we got away from the schedule. We need to go back to the original plan. This is the charter. We need to have that special call meeting to deal with all those charter issues because there are more than just two. You have appointments that need to be dealt with because the interpretation and the verbiage. You've got boards that have the interpretation. And Ms. Hurtak, you were part of the Charter Review Commission, and me and you kind of looked together when they were talking about the boards, if you recall. When it was read, we was like, that's kind of not what we talked about, but it went on. You know, we had citizens that came here to talk about the 49 years, but sometimes when you have issues that arise with anything, you have to make changes sometimes. And it's been an ongoing thing with certain issues that have come up with the charter because people have asked questions and things had kind of got flustered and awry and things need to be changed or looked at. I'm in agreement that it needs to go back to the original plan with the person that was going to do the charter review workshop. And those items that, Mr. Shelby, I think you have more than just two items that were written down for discussion. Am I right, sir?
That's right, sir. In the original concept, yes, there was other items other than what's on the agenda. That's true.
And I'll entertain anybody else's opinion, but I am of the opinion these need to be continued into a special call meeting to deal with all the charter workshop issues.
No, it's not. Councilman Hurtak.
Sorry. I don't disagree with you on that. I was really hoping for a facilitator, and I'd be happy if you wanted to entertain a motion for a special call. I would 100% be there. In fact, I was already going to bring it up today for some of the issues that are on this agenda. And I disagree that this only happens every 10 years. Just for the fact that it didn't happen for 42, 43 years is, it's a fault of the cities back then. But just saying that we can only review this every 10 years by citizens is not true. We are the legislative body. This is our job. We have the right to put anything that we deem important. We can't do it ourselves. We can't just say unilaterally this is going to be it, but we can put it to the voters. That is what we are allowed to do as a body. So while I understand some people may feel differently, I absolutely think, if we have a 20-question ballot, we have a 20-question ballot. We have voters bringing things to us saying, hey, this is the only way to get this done because, you know, we as a body can't agree on something. I mean, so folks are starting to go around and asking for it to be put on the ballot. I don't disagree. I want to have a separate special call, but I also think that that we could probably talk about CRV today. But maybe the others hold off on if you really want to. I still think a discussion doesn't hurt to help. I think also what I would love to see today is maybe ideas thrown out for other things that particular council members want to discuss, because I was told today to bring issues that I wanted to discuss. And maybe if we had more, or maybe Marty could come to us individually to discuss what types of things we want to put on this discussion, so that when we have a facilitator, that person can go in an order. But I absolutely believe that this is something that is within our purview and part of our job.
Councilman Carlson.
I agree with Councilmember Goods that because the purpose of this was to talk about charters, if we added something, which I disagreed with when we proposed them, we should have added them at the end, not at the beginning. And whether that was done accidentally or on purpose, I wish we could have focused on these things. However,
define accidentally or on purpose, please.
well, we know that the administration helped set the agenda. I know you do too, but the administration helped set the agenda, and they obviously didn't want this meeting to happen today. They delayed the other discussions so that we couldn't talk about them. And
That's quite an accusation, but please proceed.
well, anybody can look at the record. And I'll just say while I have the floor on that point, the administration and the city attorney often tell us that we need to worry about the separation of powers and the strong mayor form of government. And I would say it works both ways, that the administration needs to be respectful of the limited powers of city council. Strong mayor only means, as Mr. Shaw has defined to us and by law, strong mayor only means that the mayor doesn't sit on city council. It doesn't mean a dictatorship like we've seen in the past. It doesn't mean that a mayor can do anything they want. And obviously there's been a lot of lobbying. The mayor sent out a statement earlier. The mayor's office has rallied people in the community to come and talk to us and send us letters. And, you know, they have the right to do that, but I would just say, as much as the mayor's office asks us to respect the separation of powers, that they would respect our powers and allow us to make the decisions we need to make for our community. In terms of the timing of this, not all the fault is on the administration. There were other reasons why we delayed the discussions, but we missed the fall voting window. And now we're at risk of missing March. And my fear in delaying it is that we're going to just continue pushing it out and out, and we'll find other excuses if the facilitator's not available or somebody's out sick or whatever. I would rather go today, but if we're not going to go today, I don't think we should go through the whole list because we set expectations for the public. We should either go today, and I've got a process that I would suggest we use today, but if we're not going to go today, I don't think we should spend a lot of time. We should just defer it and set up the schedule. Further to Councilmember Hurtak's point, and counter to the comments that were made earlier, the charter clearly says, Section 10.10, there is a charter review commission. We set that up when we were on charter review committee. But there's also Section 10.11, which is equal in the charter, which says that city council can put anything on the charter amendment and whenever we want. And I sat on the charter review commission with you all. And having sat on the city council now for 3.5 years, I see a lot of imperfections in the charter. And contrary to the statements that are being pushed out by the administration, it's not anti-business, it's not anti-stability. You know, it's not a threat to the strong mayor form of government. There are just loopholes that we need to fix. And I've got a list of changes that I would like to propose. I'll just hand this out as the final word. This is a proposal that I would suggest in terms of a process. Yeah. Proposal I would make in terms of process, whether we do it now or another time. I think this should not be a we can have a long discussion if you want about any of these, but what I would suggest is that each city council member just simply go through the list of their suggestions one by one. And as they propose each one, then council will discuss, the chair can lead that discussion. And then let each person talk if they want, and at that point, if we want to let the community weigh in, we can. And then the next point would be following the discussion, the proposing council member could make a motion, and the motion would be the city staff doesn't have time to review all these. So we would ask them to hire an outside counsel to review and edit them, to make them sufficient as a proposal for the charter. And then they would present it back, if we go today, we present it back on November 3rd so that we have time to put it on the ballot before March and whatever the deadline is there. But the fourth point that I would make, and this was something true when we were on the Charter Review Commission and for City Council thereafter, I think it was proposed by Mike Suarez, is that we shouldn't, even though technically we could let something advance with 4 votes, we should only let something advance with 5 votes. Because if we don't have 5 votes, the mayor's going to veto it. And so the mayor's already said in a statement she's against any changes, however benign it sounds like. So if we don't have 5 votes, it just fails. And what I would propose on my suggestions, whether we go through them today or later, I'll read them. You all can comment on them. We vote. If we don't have 5 votes, it's dead. But if it passes, then it would come back on November 3rd, and we'd have to vote on it again. And if we don't have 5 votes again, then it dies as well. That would be my proposal. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Chairman, and I'm not here to realize what's happening. I think what I see is from what I remember, and I'm going to ask that later on to get the votes of what happened in the Charter Review Committee. I certainly wasn't part of the Charter Review Committee itself. I was one of the votes that helped create it at that time. But as I see here, maybe I'm counting wrong. I'm not being apologetic about it. We have, what, 4 members of the council that sat on the Charter Review? We have a city attorney who sat on the Charter Review, am I correct?
2.
And the assistant city attorney who sat in the Charter Review. I don't know how the votes went. I can't remember because I wasn't part of you guys. I remember that you made a recommendation, whether it was a 6-8 vote or 12 votes, CA or whatever. So I would like to get a complete order of votes that were cast on each and every item that came before the Charter Review before I do anything regarding. Because if the 4 members that sit on this council voted unanimously with the other group, then why the change now? I just want to find out what happened. I trust everyone, but I try to verify everything. So there's where I have a conflict with myself. I trust you all, but I want to verify my facts for me so I can intelligently maybe understand what happened and how you all voted on that review. I don't have those records. So I'm asking for that Charter Review, if they have the minutes on every vote that was taken, what the vote was, and if it was, I forget how many members there were. I know there were some number that was larger than 7. So that's what I need. I make a motion for that.
Motion, we have a motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco.
Discussion.
Any discussion?
Discussion.
Councilman-
Although I respect what Mr. Miranda is attempting to do, I must say that, yes, there were votes taken, sir, and things pass and things fail. But what I will tell you, as a person who's been sitting on this council, there are some flaws in our charter that this review commission did not see or did not know. So I think that is the reason why council members are asking for things to be looked at. Yes, you're right. There was a commission. We went through a charter, but we didn't go through the whole charter. We didn't have time to go through the whole charter. And again, votes were taken, but sitting as a member of this council now, I see flaws that I did not know about, I did not understand at that particular time, and now sitting on this council, I see issues of interpretation at times. I see issues that contradict one another, with another ordinance or another statute in our charter, and they need to be looked upon, sir. So that's the reason I'm saying that,
I
sir.
appreciate it. In fact, may I amend the motion then to include how long the commission, Citizen Review Board met, how many times they met, so we understand what they did. And if there's any time in the discussion where there was any items that someone brought up that they didn't understand the charter.
Second, second of the motion, do you second? Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to say, as a member of that committee, out of the recommendations I have, maybe one of them was discussed at the charter review. So these are all new things that, like Councilmember Good said, new things that I've discovered by just through acting on city council. And as I said before, nothing that I'm proposing will work against a strong mayor form of government. It's not going to disrupt business. It's not going to disrupt the economy. There are some people that just don't want change in the community. And as you look at the discussions, they were very good discussions. However, I'll also tell you, we set two processes at the beginning with the facilitator. Number one is that we wouldn't have a chair, so there was no real leadership of it. Number two is that there were 9 members, as I remember it, and we said we had to have a super majority, which is 6, to approve anything. And the former mayor had enough votes, either directly or indirectly, that anything he didn't like didn't move forward. So there were a lot of things but I'm not proposing any of those. There are new things that have popped up that I think just need to be tweaked. They're not anything that should be offensive to anybody. It's just tweaking it so that it works for the public.
May I make another amendment?
We're going to take the vote first.
I would
Yes.
like to amend the motion that those individuals that were appointed by the council and the mayor, that I want a complete vote down on how they voted.
Mr. Shelby.
Yes, ma'am. Council, just by way of a reminder, the deadline by the clerk's office is, I believe it's January 20th.
Plenty of time.
Last I checked, and they need to get
Plenty of
it
time.
with enough time, January 20th of 2023, they need enough time to be able to get it at least a week or two to secure the translation, just so you just know in terms of how much time you do have.
We still have a motion on the floor that's been amended by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman,
I'll wait.
seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Is there a time?
Mr. Shelby.
Is there a time frame for how that's going to be conducted and who's going to do it? Because that is quite a, I will tell you, a labor-intensive process. Just, are you directing it with a time frame, and are you directing it to a certain department or person?
Well, the records are there. I could step down right now, not a council member. I could say, when I'm not here, file a review and ask for the same thing any public, any official that lives in the city of Tampa can ask. I can file that, and they have to give me the same information. So, and that's done kind of quickly. So,
So you don't
which way do you
necessarily
want to go, sir?
You don't, you say, you
I
don't.
don't have to do it as a council member. I can do it as Charlie Miranda, a private citizen.
Oh, so then you're not asking for a new compilation, you're asking for the records as
I
they
asked
exist.
exactly what I said, sir. And if you didn't hear it, I'm sorry.
Time was yes, thank you. Time was the next question. Is there a time for it to come back, sir?
I asked to come back within 30 days. That satisfy you, sir? Well, which day do you want, sir?
That's council's pleasure.
It's fine. Sir?
Councilman Maniscalco.
I mean, I think it should be easy. It's just the minutes and the recordings from the meetings. That's what I would do. I'd watch it and gather, I mean, is that sufficient?
That's
a
it.
typical
That's all we
public
need.
record request. So, I think it's fair, and 30 days would put us at,
The 22nd,
the 27th is the workshop, November 3rd is the city council regular session. November 3rd?
Fine with me.
Okay, second.
In fact, I'll be a year wiser by then,
That's right. Happy birthday.
or maybe not so wise. Listen, at my age, the life sentence is very short.
Roll call vote, please. Hang on, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Hurtak.
I have a question about that, in that, I think I would like it to come back within 30 days. So I think that either the 22nd council workshop or the 20th regular session would be better, because my next motion is going to be to set an actual meeting for this directly afterward, because January 20th sounds like it's far off, but it really isn't. So I do think time is of the essence. So within those 30 days would be the 22nd. So I think it should come back. And if it's just records, then
Do you remember Missy-Agala, Carencia? That you'd have all the minutes, and it's quite a packet. And
I
know-
still have it.
Exactly. Well, exactly. So the question is, as long as council has the opportunity, once they get it, to be able to review it in time. I mean, if you wanted the recordings, they still have the recordings, but to sit through how many hours? What were the meetings, 2 hours in length?
At least, yeah, they were longer.
Times 10 meetings, perhaps? So that, I just want to make sure the council is just aware of the information they'll be getting and get a time with.
That's fine, as long as we can set something up within 2 weeks to sit down and talk about this.
You want October 20th?
Is that amenable to the motion maker?
Yeah, it's all about the motion maker, but I'm just
It's
saying.
fine. I'm fine with that.
So October 20th would be mine.
Is that fine with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have a motion that's been amended by Councilman Miranda, original motion by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Carlson.
Yes.
Vieira.
Yes.
Maniscalco.
Yes.
Hurtak.
Yes.
Goods.
Yes.
Miranda.
Yes.
Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
We're now going to go to Councilman Vieira. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll speak briefly because speaking long would undermine what I'm trying to say. I'm not opposed as a philosophical matter to amending the charter right now. I'm not. It's about what we're going to do. So this has nothing to do with this. With regards to the issue on whether or not we should go forward today, that would be the height of inefficiency and dysfunction if we did not. I actually brought this issue up. We were supposed to do a disability housing workshop, and I moved it to January so that we would have more time for this. It is right now 11:14, about 11:15, and we can move on this and have a robust discussion. The procedures that Councilman Carlson has noted, I find these to be very reasonable and can make efficient use. I think it's great to have each council member speak about any charter amendments they would like. The 5-2 observation is certainly something that's very important and whatnot, but I don't want to jump the gun and go, let's just cancel this and move it to another day. That is the height of dysfunction and of inefficiency. For the record, to be here for this very important meeting, I got home last night from West Palm Beach at 3 a.m., and I'm here to discuss the charter, and let's discuss these issues. And if we can get it all done within the time frame, great. If we can't, we'll have another one, but let's not presuppose that we can't. Let's just move on. So I'll be quiet so that we can move on. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
That's fine with me.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I'm happy either way we discuss it today, or as Councilmember Goods talked about, getting a facilitator and whatnot. I know time is of the essence, and we'll make it to the March ballot. I don't see anything else, but, I will say that the previous time that the charter was looked at was 1974, 1975. And I know Councilmember Miranda, you were newly elected, so you know, and I say this respectfully because you were there. And this did not come back until I was in my previous term on council when, again, then I had the honor of serving with you, and we brought up the Charter Review Commission. And we discussed that. So such a long period of time passed between the 1970s, I wasn't born yet, until it was brought up to look at this charter. And I asked myself, because I've been thinking about this very seriously, we had robust discussion, a board that was set. Many of the people here were on that board. Councilman Carlson was my appointee to that board. And so much was discussed and a lot was done. Is it necessary again and I'm not saying we don't have the discussion, we're gonna have the discussion, but to revisit this charter, which is the city's constitution, in such a short period of time since the review board, the charter, review board met, considering that such a long period of time passed from the 1970s look, how often is the United States Constitution amended? There's instances in the 20th century when, prohibition and repealing prohibition and whatnot. This is our city's constitution. It's something that, we have to look at and treat respectfully and carefully, but be careful what we change. And looking at Councilmember Carlson's guidelines here, I agree with it. I think it's very fair and it's a very organized way to go about it. But also, number one, each city council member will review one by one their list of suggested charter amendments. I don't have any because I'm happy with the charter as it is. Again, I don't want to do anything radical, not saying that we are, or continue changing this. You know, it should be maybe a every 10 years process, but not something where we just looked at it, and here we are elected 3-4 years later, and we're looking at tweaking it again. Again, I'm not against the process and the discussion, but, you know, it's too soon is what I'm saying.
If I may, on Mr. Maniscalco's.
Councilman Miranda.
On Mr. Maniscalco's comments. Yes, the charter, we got elected, 3 of us got elected in 1974. And I had the pleasure of working with great individuals, and the 2 that got elected were very dear to my heart. One was Sandy Freeman, the other was Jan Platt. And I learned a lot from both of them. It was Platt's motion in 1974 to look at the charter. And I'm smiling at myself because I remember the conversation. In fact, I was sitting in the same chair. The dais was a little different, but I'm sitting in the same chair. And the conversation that came up started with there was chickens and horses and all that kind of stuff. That's how long it had been reviewed before, I would imagine, because she's the one that brought it up. But it was talking about the charter still, and you can look it up if maybe I'm a little offline. But if I remember, there was a lot of other things, but the main thing that stuck in my mind was even in the charter then it addressed the animals in the neighborhood. And I think I remember that. Maybe I was dreaming about it, but if somebody wants to verify me and say that I was incorrect, I'm welcome with that, because 1974 wasn't yesterday. But it was a great thing that we had communications. The whole thing was different. If you talk about efficiency, inefficiency, time is what tells what's efficient or not. We never had these things given to us. We have a mimeograph machine back here that had to be done. We didn't have, no one had an office. You had a little punch hole with a pigeonhole where you get your emails. Not no emails, excuse me, a little pink slip that gave you a number. We had one telephone right behind here. And the office that we are at now, where the mayor's assistant, and where the city clerk is at, was Mayor Poe's office. And it was different. Was it better? You got to ask the public, not me. Was it more efficient than now? I tell you what, it was much more communication than now. And talking about communication, you had people in the media that would follow you home. They wanted a story. They wanted to see if you drank. They wanted to do it. We don't even have media now. What we have here now, people trying to do something the right way, but there's media so scattered that the general public only looks at what? The internet for information. If you look at the papers then, on how they wrote, and in the one ads, that was 4 or 5 pages of one ad. Now you're lucky if you get a quarter of a page. That's why the media is going out of business. It ain't because they want to. It's because the public is not listening to them. They're doing something new came up, that's all. But please check me, verify. I want to see if I'm right or wrong. I just came up with that, trying to get my mind and think back a few years back. And I believe that was right. But that's what it's all about, Mr. Maniscalco.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shelby.
Yes, thank you. To Councilman Maniscalco's point, when I first joined the city in 2004, one of the first questions that was asked was about the charter. And at the time, the clerk, Shirley Fox Knowles, put together a whole list of amendments that took place, that were placed on the ballot by city council subsequent to the adoption of the original charter. And I still have that, and she can update it because there have been several that have been on there, that have been placed on the ballot, that the voters have voted on. So it's, and it might be informative to council. Most of them passed. Some of them, actually I believe it was during the Friedman administration, didn't, as I recall. But I have that available. I could provide that to Ms. Fox Knowles if she doesn't have it, and she may want to update it. But it's very useful to provide to council to see what the council at the time placed on the ballot at what time and whose administration, and how it turned out.
I would love that.
I'm going to go to Councilwoman Hurtak first, and then I will go to you, Councilman Carlson.
We can have this discussion, but it just seems to me that with all this additional information that we're going to get, I don't know if we should continue today, but I do want to say that the that City Council has not reviewed the charter. It was the Charter Review Commission that reviewed the charter, and it was City Council that reviewed the Charter Commission's recommendations.
Right.
They did not, the City Council itself did not review the charter. And so I think this is an important discussion to have, and I think that we should spend all day on it and nothing else. I don't have any specific things either today. I really was hoping this could just be a conversation that could start, but if others have something, that's wonderful. To me, this was not going to be a one and done. To me, this was the beginning of a conversation. Because we have switched it so many times. I didn't know if folks were ready, and I thought this conversation, to me, was gonna bring more questions for me. That's the way I looked at this conversation. But I'm happy to continue now. I'm happy to go as far as we can and do it again, but if we're having all this additional information, what's the point? We can have this, but why? If we're not actually gonna meet again and discuss this, so.
Mr. Shelby.
I was just thinking, if council, it depends on, it's council's pleasure. If council wants to have a threshold discussion of the subject matters that might come up in the future, and if there's a strong sentiment one way or the other, as Mr. Carlson suggests, then it may put the matter to bed today for that particular subject matter. Otherwise, it's however council wishes to do it. Let me just stop there.
Councilman Carlson.
Yep. I think that we have a unique opportunity here that has been different maybe than ever, in that we have 4 members of the Charter Review Commission, plus we have 3 city council members who appointed members of the Charter Review Commission, reviewed their work, and voted on charter changes. So we happen to have 7 people here who are very experienced in this area. If we decide to go forward, my request that might slightly break my process here is that on the CRB one, that we see if we have a motion and a second before we proceed. And then the last comment is that Councilmember Hurtak proposed moving it to another date. I would suggest that, so that we can end this conversation, that she go ahead and make a motion to move it to a particular date, and let's vote that up or down. And if it goes down, then we need to set up just the process today. Otherwise, we need to set up agree on the process today and continue. Thank you.
My thought was that if I've been in touch with the facilitator was engaged through USF's Institute of Government, and I spoke with Angela Chris this week, and they are still on standby. But the question is a matter of availability of the chambers, and that this has came up the last time, the matter of the availability of the chambers, availability of the facilitator, and the availability, most important, of the council. That's one of the
You know, I'm going to make a statement. Out of point of privilege to a councilman, he wanted to start this whole discussion. That's been almost 40 minutes now. I believe we could have gotten through this agenda item very quickly. When we talk about an agenda, everybody gets a draft of that, especially a final draft. And it comes to us, I believe, on Tuesday. Anybody could have sent a memo to my office saying they don't like the agenda. They can change it at any time. Excuse me 1 second, Mr. Shelby. It is my opinion that we have now just wasted 40 minutes talking about this. We have people in the audience, both from the police department, ACLU, staff, PBA, a citizen here in the office, in chambers. We've just wasted 40 minutes. Councilman Vieira.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Can we please get the item started? And by the way, I do have a charter amendment I'm going to talk about. I do have things to talk about. I prepared for today, like I'm sure we all did. Let's do this thing and move forward for the love of the Almighty. Please, let's do it. Thank you. And I agree. Thank you.
Now, Councilman Goods, if you want to make a motion to change this to another time, because now it's not the appropriate time that you feel, please make your motion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not about where I feel, it's just the facts. And to your point, when you made, people are here, well, this is our council, and we have to do what we have to do to make sure we're in the right position. And I did ask about the agenda, and I was told that I couldn't do that. So I did ask that question, because I went to the clerk's office.
Who did you ask that
I went
to?
to the clerk's office and asked the clerk, could I put a memo in a reference to the agenda? They said, no, I could not.
I don't see why not.
Okay, well,
That goes in every week. I see members changing the agenda.
I'm just saying, I'm going to argue that. I asked that point. I'm past that now. All I want to do now, if we're going to move ahead with the CRB, move ahead. But the rest, I believe the charter review should have its own special day, and we deal with those issues. And I can go by the guidelines that Mr. Carlson has set forth. I can deal with that.
And just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Once the draft agenda goes out, council can request whatever it wants through a memo and inform everybody, but ultimately it's during the approval of the agenda. Council, in other words, a single individual council member can ask an item to be removed, and if that's the pleasure of council, that's when it gets removed or reordered. But you're right.
Yes, it can be done.
At council, yes.
Can be done.
Chairman, I'm just going to,
Mr. Councilman Miranda.
if I may, we have some taxpayers who happen to be city employees. They've been here 2 hours and 30 minutes. Started at 9, now it's 11:30, and they're just as valuable as the general public coming in and asking us, this should be heard today. We have all the salary that is wasted if we don't do it today. We're going to come back another day, and the same people are going to be here for the same charade again. So it means twice that we're going to have to pay them. As a taxpayer, forget about me being a city council member. I don't like people being in the audience that we're paying their taxes, sitting down, listening to us debate something that's on the agenda that should be heard today. If it wasn't going to be heard today, it should have been done in the morning at 9 o'clock when we said we're going to hold this item to another date. That was not done. And I'm not casting aspiration on no one, including myself should have done that, and I did not. That's all.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
I'd like to remind everybody that this is the only time we have to talk. I see no point in speeding up meetings. I have no interest in speeding up a meeting. I want everybody to talk. And if people have to sit here, they have to sit here. I'm sorry for that. But I'm not going to apologize for us having this conversation. I think it's important. I think he brought up a point. We discussed it. Everybody's had something to say about it. So you can't say that people are just sitting here and waiting. We are having the discussion because we are not allowed to have the discussion any other time. I think if anything, it shows the public that we truly do not talk to one another any other time. This is our chance to have those arguments, to have this discussion. So I don't have a problem with the 45 minutes. I would do it for 2 hours if it gives us what if we end up coming up with an agreement. And I think that's the way we should always look at council. If we're here for 14 hours every Thursday, I'm fine with that. If we add another day to council's calendar, I'm fine with that. This is our job.
And I thank you very much for that, Councilwoman Hurtak. I have often said this is a 24/7 job. And I will be here until midnight. I will come in at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I've often said that another day needs to be added to city council. I've had various council people that said, ain't no way. I'll be here 5 days a week. But it's my opinion we need to be more efficient in the time we spend here. Who is going to want to open agenda item number 5, or is Councilman Goods going to go to his original talking point and make a motion to put this out at a later date?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion this item be moved to a special call meeting with the direction of Mr. Carlson's memorandum in that order to follow.
Is this item agenda number 5 and 6, or just 5?
5 and 6, sir.
And
And
seven?
7, because they all can coincide with the same date. Mr. Shelby, what dates did you have? 'Cause I had asked you to get with that lady to ask some dates.
Yes, I could see if I can get that answered by tonight if possible, and if not, I'll let you know.
Well, we need that answered.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Was there a second to that motion? I'm sorry.
Wait.
I'll second.
Second, but Mr. Shelby, would you be able to talk with the facilitator today, and then tonight come back with an answer on what date, and we can take we can make the motion now and pass the motion, and then figure out the date this evening, so we don't waste any more time?
The reality, council, is that there's several factors. The availability of this room, because
do it on a
because
Wednesday.
it's televised, and it is limited, especially when things have already been noticed. And number two is once I come back with potential dates that have the room availability and the facilitator's availability, the next important thing to check is each of your personal calendars to see if you have the availability.
Mr. Shelby, I will make sure that I'm here whatever date, doesn't matter.
Councilman Carlson, you are recognized.
Yeah, what I suggest is that Councilmember Goods pick a specific date, like a Tuesday morning, and then we can confirm whether it's available. But if we all can look at our calendars now and pick it, I was originally in favor of the facilitator, but if we follow a simple process like this, I trust the chair to facilitate it, and we could end up in longer discussions than we need. Some of you are going to be against any changes. You're going to vote against all of them. Some of you might be in favor of all, but what we need is 5 votes. And I think we can pretty quickly get to that on these issues, and we can go up or down on them. And then whatever we end up with, we're going to come back on another date and review it one final time. We get 5 votes, then it goes on the ballot.
Excuse me.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Hurtak, you're recognized.
I'm fine with that. I also think that if we go ahead and, I think that we could look at number 5 today, because it's not part of the charter. It's not part of the discussion of changing the charter. This is the idea of a draft ordinance to put on the ballot for voters, which is not coming from the charter. This is like a separate issue. So I'd be happy to do that, or I'd be happy to move it. But honestly, these are council chambers. This is our house. I'm sorry, but it is. It's our house. And I understand some things have been noticed already, but we're talking about doing this a month from now when nothing would have been noticed. And another group can move. But this is our house, and if we have to be here every day, other people are gonna have to find other places to go.
Councilman Goods, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. She took the words right out of my mouth. I hear Mr. Shelby always talking about, other people, but this is our chambers. We're the legislative body here. We've got some work to do. So, again, I commend Councilwoman Hurtak for being strong and standing by that. And we can't be afraid of political fallout. We just have to make decisions. I'm a decision maker. I don't play those games of politics. I just make a decision. So I just want to move on. Motion's on the floor. Mr. Carlson wants to amend something. I'm happy with that, but I just think it needs to be a separate day to deal with the issues, and we move on. I mean, what dates do we have?
What's the first Tuesday in November?
Yeah.
First Tuesday in
Oh, it is election day. That's a good point. Okay, what about the second Tuesday in November?
No, the first Tuesday in November would be.
Council commendation.
Why not October?
Councilman Miranda wanted all the data from the
data.
charter review. I was trying to be nice and do something after that.
On the 8th. We can do the first.
The first, there you go.
First of November? I'm good. I mean, I'm good any day.
Councilman Miranda, you're
I
recognized.
agree. If Ms. Hartak said we can listen to 5, we can get 5 and get that out of the way today. They're here now. And let me tell you, I am going to recommend something in the new thing. I'm going to recommend we go back to the old days, how we used to come in Tuesdays and Thursdays. And
Thank you.
you had a committee with 8 items, you passed 1 through 8. No, you got to read each one and take a vote on it so that every public knows exactly how you felt at the time you voted. And it's got to be done individually. It takes a little longer, but guess what? It cuts down on the chatter because you got to get in and out, and the ones that are debatable are debatable. So that's what I'm going to do. I remember that as I'm speaking. You elected officials like myself, and I think meeting twice a week will help us.
I concur.
Gas money, but yeah.
We still have a motion on the floor, made by Councilman Goods, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. I hesitantly ask this. Any further discussion?
I want to explain, if I may. May I, sir?
Councilman Vieira, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm voting no on this for the aforementioned reasons. I mentioned this twice, that we had other workshops. I removed one of my workshops. I think that issue has been waived. We have time today to deal with these issues. I think it's not an efficient use of time at all, that's respectful to the public, et cetera. So that's why I'll be no. I am available that day for the record, but I'm voting no on this. Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call vote.
November 1st, a special call meeting, is that what the motion is? For 9 a.m. to what time? Because that's. That is something that the facilitator or agreed to till noon at a particular cost. Well, you could.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, if you want to do without the facilitator.
Can we have a little order? Councilman Carlson, you're recognized.
Sorry, if you could just simply make your motion to move it till November 1st from 9 until whenever, and nothing else will be placed on the agenda that day. And if the facilitator is available and the chair would like to work with the facilitator, then we'll bring the facilitator in. Otherwise, the chair will facilitate, following these guidelines.
Councilman,
Yes,
you
please.
are recognized.
You amend it? We can amend Mr. Carlson, motion.
Yes, please.
I'll vote the friend of Mr. Carlson.
If
We have an amended motion by Councilman Carlson. Does the second still want to second?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Councilwoman Hurtak.
Does the amended include number 5, or can we just get that out of the way today?
The original
That's why I'm asking for
the
an
original
amendment.
motion was 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, just leave it.
Yeah, just leave it. All I'm going about is just leave it.
Okay.
Council, I could find out pretty darn quick whether the facilitator is available.
It don't,
Doesn't matter.
it don't matter now.
It doesn't,
Mr. Shelby, come,
yes, sir.
let's take this vote as amended by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Motion carried with Councilmember Citro, Councilmember Miranda, and Councilmember Vieira voting no.
I would like to personally thank everyone that came here for this council meeting today, for staying here. Thank you. Information and reports. Councilman Carlson.
None, thank you.
Councilman Vieira.
I have
Even those two people that are here, even the ACO and the citizen that sat here.
That's what I'm talking, Mr. Citro.
Okay.
So let's get it straight now. You know, I
understand, but I understand, but there are still people that stay here.
don't have a problem with that, sir.
Okay. Councilman Vieira. Councilman Maniscalco.
No.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
No.
Councilman Goods.
Yes, I have several, sir.
Councilman Miranda.
I have none.
I have several, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gentlemen, I motion that the Tampa Police Department report back to council on what are the procedures or protocols currently in place to notify alert private schools or daycares of what's happening in the community, or where there is a registry for daycares or private schools to be notified of any such emergencies, active shooters, or any incidents that happen in the communities of proximity. If not, please bring back suggestions or policies to resolve this lack of. Be brought back on October 6th.
If I
And the reason I ask that because several daycares and schools have called in my office. We've had some shootings, and they are complaining that they're not being notified, that the school district has a system that they notify for a shutdown. And a lot of daycares and private schools are saying they're not being notified. So that's why I want to get some clarification on that.
Who was the second on that? Motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilwoman Hurtak. All in favor?
Next one, sir, I'd like to make a motion that the Tampa City Council give accommodation to Joseph Johnson for his extraordinary leadership and service to the city of Tampa as the former chair of the city's Budget Advisory Committee on November 8th.
A motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
And the final, last one, sir, again, you know, I don't get into politics or games. I'm a straight shooter, and we need to get clear the air and get some things done on this particular item. I make a motion, I move to direct the legal department to prepare a resolution pursuant to section 6.06 of the city charter for salary increases for city council members that the administration has deemed proper and acknowledged, and that resolution be brought back on October 6th for an up or down vote to go in effect immediately upon adoption.
We have a motion made by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilwoman Hurtak. Is there any discussion?
If I may, so.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, sir. So just to clarify the motion, Councilman Goods, you're asking for a vote on it. This is not supporting either a monetary amount or supporting a raise. It's just merely to get a vote, to get it disposed of, like you said.
No, it's really to go with the actual recommendations of the administration. It was clear in the motion.
Yeah, but in other words, I'm clarifying your motion, which is your motion is not in support of a pay raise, number one. Number two, your motion is not in support of a monetary amount of a pay raise. Your motion is merely calling for a vote, like you said, to get it out of the way, correct?
Correct.
Okay, yeah,
Well,
I'm fine with that.
I'm asking for the pay, I'm asking for the increase for city members that the administration deemed proper. I think I was clear in that motion, sir.
If I can, just for the
Yes.
sake of clarification, because what is your intent of the motion?
My intent of the motion is that we adopt the recommended resolution that the administration deemed was proper for salary increase for this city council.
And you want it to take effect when?
October 6th, on that same day.
The day it's brought back?
It was brought back.
For an up or down vote?
Yes, sir.
So with whatever the legal department deems necessary in order to effectuate that, is that your
That's
intent?
correct.
Okay.
Mr. Massey.
I just was going to say that this would be a resolution to amend the budget. That would be prepared actually by Revenue and Finance. It would come through legal, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Councilman Miranda, did you have anything?
No, since we're putting things to vote on by election, I thought that this would be a perfect thing to put on the election for the public to put it up or down. I mean, I'm not against raises, but I am against a 42% raise when the people there's over 40% of the people in this country cannot handle a $400 emergency. That includes the people in Tampa. 60% of the public can't handle a $1,000 emergency. And we're getting a 42% raise? That's what bothers me, not the raise, the amount.
Councilman Vieira, did you have anything more?
If I may, yes, and it's funny because and I don't want to open up the can of worms of the charter, but a charter amendment I was actually going to look at was something patterned after the 27th Amendment to preclude city council from doing something like this, which is the 27th Amendment to the Constitution. We're talking about the Constitution. States simply that if the United States Congress takes a pay increase, it may not get the benefit of that until after an election has happened. That's the one charter amendment I was going to seek to have. So this would probably violate that in spirit, but again, just making a note in that regard. But it's good to get that out of the way and vote on it. So,
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that in a $1.9 billion budget, that the most press coverage about anything has been about this. And it was something that the administration offered to city council without city council's request. And I don't know who pushed it to the media, but I mean, whether an individual asked for it, I don't think this body ever voted to ask for it. And so somebody, I'm not blaming anybody because I don't know who did it, but somebody's been pushing the story to the media about the 40-whatever% increase. The fact is that city council is not paid enough. And as individuals, we can turn it down just like we can turn down the cost of living increase. If anybody wants to not take this, don't take it. But I think it's our responsibility to protect this body in the future. And we need good people to run for these offices. And if we set it for October, or we set it for when our term runs out or the next term, we need to make sure that we're protecting this body by paying enough for somebody to work here. It really is more than a full-time job now. It's not a part-time job. Everybody knows that. We're only here on certain days, but we're working all the rest of the time, day and night, on issues. And it's not for us, it's to protect the institution. You can't, most people won't give up their job because the jobs pay a lot more to be able to do this. I think, and I want a charter amendment related to this too, but I think we should put in the charter some kind of formula for the mayor to set the mayor's salary, because the mayor's salary by charter right now, I think, is set between the mayor and city council. And that there should be a formula based on that, where the city council should be a percentage of the mayor. Why is it that the mayor can get $160,000 or whatever it is, $180,000, which, by the way, is way too small for a $2 billion organization? I lived in Singapore, and I studied great cities in the United States that are run very well, and I studied cities in other places. They pay more, and you can't just compare yourself to small towns around here. We have to compare ourselves to the best cities in our country and maybe some outside. I'm not saying we should pay $1 million a year, but the mayor of the CEO of a $2 billion organization should get much, much more than $180,000. And city council should at least get 50% of that. Are you saying that we do only 10 or 20% of the work of a mayor? At least we do 50% of the work of a mayor. So why wouldn't we get at least 50 or 60% of whatever the mayor gets? And it's not about us enriching ourselves. We can all turn it down. But in the future, we need to make sure we have the best and brightest. What places like Singapore do is they pay the same as the private sector, which we can never do. But they do that so there's no corruption, so that nobody will be enticed into doing things that they shouldn't do. And nobody here is doing any of that, but in the past there have been stories about that. And we need to make sure that we protect this city for the future by making it a viable job for the really smart people to come in, and because ultimately the 7 of us are in charge of that $2 billion organization as well. Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday I was here and I thought to myself, this is my happy place. I know it sounds cheesy, but I love coming to City Hall. So, and thinking about all this salary stuff and whatnot, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a heart surgeon. Why? Because I wanted to help people. As I grew up, I wanted to be an attorney. Why? Because I wanted to be able to defend people, help people. But I was inspired when I was probably about 16 years old that I wanted to run for public office. And everybody talks about, I want to be president one day and, whatever. But certain individuals inspired me too, because people ask me, why did he run for city council? Why not Congress or state representative, whatever? Because I wanted to be close to the people and help the people and serve the people. People ask me, what's your favorite part of the job? And I said, when I'm able to help somebody, when I'm able to see that I put a smile on somebody's face because we were able to assist in something or be responsive, whether it's fill a pothole or, fix some kind of flooding or get their trash picked up. The point that I'm making is it was never about the money. Yeah, heart surgeons can make a lot of money. Attorneys can make a lot of money. Coming here was not about the money. I never thought about, the benefits of the job. Yeah, we get health insurance. We get a 24-hour parking space. We get to go to events. We get invited to lunches. There's a lot of great things, but it's never about the money. It's never, until this came up, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the sentiment and everything, but I'm not here for that. I'm not here for whether it's a 3% increase or 42% increase. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks like everybody does, and I live within those means. So, I understand what Councilman Carlson says. You want the best and the brightest. It's a huge budget. It's a big city, but it's just, I don't want to use the word disenchanted, but again, it's not about the money, it's about the public service. So, we take this to a vote October 6th, fine, but again, it's about giving back to the community. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
I don't disagree that it's about giving back to the community. but we still have to live.
I know.
As I've found, it's incredibly hard to keep my other job in addition to this. So I see how the struggle is. But what amazes me about this is that we're having this fight about this, but we don't ever talk about the mayor's salary. At $180,000, I think that's perfectly reasonable. And like Councilman Carlson said, I don't think it's enough. I mean, you shouldn't have to say, you shouldn't have to, we're not doing a vow of poverty when we say we want to be public servants. I don't like that. I don't think that's appropriate. We still have to survive. We still have to, live our lives. We have to pay our mortgages or our rents or whatever else we want to do. Yes, we all have to live within our means, but by doing this, we are choosing to live within different means than the means we already have. We're having to reduce the amount of work we do for our other jobs. So I just don't see the big drama in this. And if we're going to have drama in it, it should be all of us. The mayor should be involved in the conversation too. And I don't think anyone up here would agree that the mayor doesn't deserve $180,000. And if you think that we only do a third of the work, I disagree with that. If you want to look at it monetarily, none of us get involved for that. In fact, I'll be honest, I didn't even realize we got a salary, sort of, until I got into this. I haven't had a W-2 or whatever in, 15 years. I just wish we could agree that government is worth money. We're worth it. We as a body are worth the time that we put in here. And if we want to add days to the schedule, awesome. Let's do it. Let's all be here. If we want to be here every day, and if we want to change the charter so that council is considered full-time, I think it's well in the time to do that, because we are a city of 400,000 people. We're doing amazing things. And the mayor has started some phenomenal programs that we as a council are trying to implement. I just wish we could stop fighting. As Councilman Carlson said, this is brought up by the media, and now the media is going wildly about it. We as a body, and I'd be happy to send it forward, but I agree that we need some sort of formula going forward so that we don't do this again and we don't put this on another council again. Let's just make it a formula. Half of what the mayor makes, half of what county commission makes, however that formula is, let's do that so that no other council ever has to have this fight again. Because this shouldn't be something that voters are going to argue with us about. They should be talking to us about issues, not how much money this job pays. Let's just set it and forget it so we don't have to do this again.
Councilman Miranda.
Let me just say there's been some reference to indirectly that there's leaks to the media. Anybody want to give me a lie detector test? I've never talked to any media about any salary, about anything. So that's number one. And the problem is whoever tells me, I'm going to ask them to do the same thing with me. So I'm willing for that. I'm willing for all that kind of stuff. But it's not the salary. It's that every year there's a raise given, except for 4 years when there was nothing and we let go 700 and some odd people under the hourly administration. And she did a fantastic job of riding the crisis and doing the best that she could do when there was very little income to do it with, period. She held the feet to the fire and kept this city running with very little cash. So she should be congratulated. However, this is still a public service. And individuals who make a lot of money or don't make money will still seek this office because that's what they want to do. In my case, I work 2 jobs, and I'm going to be 82. And I want to do both jobs until the day I die. So for me, work doesn't bother me. I sleep 4 or 5 hours a day. So come into my world, and money doesn't mean anything. I met my obligations to my whole family with my wife. We planned it this way. And at the end of the day, I'm the recipient of all those fruit because she's not here. So it doesn't matter to me if we work Tuesday or Thursdays or whatever you want. But If you want really transparency, you want all the cards on the table. You don't just pass the whole thing, I move this and it goes by. Every item is discussed until you pass them all. And that's how you get the real picture of what you're doing. And that's how you get it done. We have a lot of advantages that the council members before us never had. Never had. And the old days, you didn't get a SIP at the end of the month, a little check coming in. That wasn't there. You got your salary, whatever it was, $9,600 a year or whatever it was, and that was it. And those salaries didn't jump ever. And I got it scheduled in the office that I asked for. So I'm not against raises. I'm against getting a big raise at one time. You can get it incrementally. You can maybe tie it into what the general employees get, plus 1 or 2 more percent to get to where you want to be. But to do it all in one crack, because then that crack becomes more and more. 4% of 53,000 is one thing. 4% of 72,000, you figure it out. It's almost double. So the increment of interest, the increment of salary that increments when you go from 53 to 72, just at the general employees, you're far away going quicker and higher than ever before. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about not a raise. I'm talking about get a raise like everybody else, and with longevity, you equal to them in due time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Carlson.
To Councilmember Hurtek's point about bringing this up over and over again, sorry to do this, but Councilmember Goots, would you consider an amendment that would say something like that we would like city attorney to come back next week with an ordinance to approve that would accept the mayor's recommended salary for city council, and then on October 1st each year, the city council's salary will be set at 50% of the mayor's salary.
I don't know whether that, if you could bind future city councils or future budgetary matters, tying it that way, Mr. Massey, that's my opinion.
Every year, the budget has to set out the salary of all the officers and all the employees of the city. And then, so that's how we do it. We adopt it every year. You typically don't bind them. I think if you want to have some sort of formula built in, frankly, that may be something that makes more sense as potentially as a charter discussion.
Yeah. Why don't we, and I want to bring it back to the charter, but why don't we say, just add to that, subject to approval of the budget by the mayor and city council, which follows the law and the charter then.
If Mr. Massey and maybe the chief of staff would be able to talk to this, the way the salaries are set now, there's actually a separate fund where the monies are placed for a determination of increases that are going to be made, for instance, merit increases and step increases and the like.
But the charter does say
right.
but for elected officers,
yes.
That's different. It has to be done by an express resolution or ordinance that's approved by a majority of you all and recommended by the mayor.
And just as a point of historical reference, it's I don't even remember what the council's budget, the council's salary was. I believe it was maybe in the 30s or 30,000 for some time. In the 2004, 2000. I'm trying to think of.
In the mid-20s, and like 03 was at 26,000.
Councilman Maniscalco, you're recognized.
Okay. But what happened was that there was a resolution that was made that raised it. I believe it was to 50,000. I don't recall the amount. I don't have it in front of me, but I do recall the resolution. And since that time, whatever the cost of living that was applied to the, I guess, the managerial or the supervisory.
I believe what's happened, and this is the way it was explained to me by the Mr. Perry, who's our budget director, is that that a cost of living increase is oftentimes been reflected in the line item for your salary. So when you approve the budget, if it reflects both your salary and the cost of living increase, and that's specifically spelled out in the budget, then that meets the parameters of 6.6.
Mr. Chair, could I just modify my amendment? If I could just modify my amendment, we we can pass what he's suggesting by resolution today.
I think he's asking for a motion for a financial resolution or a budget, or a resolution to amend the budget to increase your salaries per the recommendation or the study that was provided by the administration, is how I understand that.
Let me just run this past you real fast. So if we had an amendment to say that by resolution today, that the city council accepts the mayor's budget, the salary recommendations to council, and that city council suggests the city council salaries in future budget approval, in future budgets would be set at 50% of the mayor's, subject to approval by the mayor and city council in the budget.
I mean, you could, that would be a number one, it would not be a resolution, that would be a motion for us to bring forward a resolution for you to vote on relative to the salary increase for this year. Future budget years, that is, yeah, obviously you could ask us to do that, but that's subject to financial availability, and the budget's a complex document, but your input is.
But the point is that we don't have to every year come back and set what the pay should be. The staff would automatically start with 50%, and then if it is not possible, then in the budget we can agree or disagree with it. Ultimately, it's approval of the budget. But the idea is that instead of us, we should not have to set the formula. I agree it should be modified in the charter, but for right now, if we're going to approve something today and take, all the bad press, it's interesting. There's more media scrutiny about city council's $20,000 pay increase than there is about toilet to tap or Hannah Avenue or any of these other wastes of millions of dollars. And I'm appalled by how these stories are being pushed instead of the factual stories that are substantive, that are concerned by the community. But how can we move this forward today? I think
there would be. I think you're asking. I think what's being proposed by Mr. Goods and by you and are separate measures. One is a motion asking us to bring forth a financial resolution next week that you all would vote on about adjusting your salary for this upcoming year, and then coming forward with maybe a separate resolution about how your salaries would be set or formulated, ideally in the future, subject to the approval of the budget.
Or depending on
We don't
how
need
you
it.
read 6.06.
Unless Marty disagrees with it, I'll withdraw my motion and let Mr. Goods make his motion, and we can discuss this at the charter workshop.
I'll go with the original motion I made, with the recommended recommendation of the administration be approved and setting a resolution to be effective immediately. Plain and simple.
If I may,
Councilman
just,
Miranda.
let me also clear my air anyway. I, as a council member, have never talked to the administration about a raise for council members. So I don't know, maybe you can speak to how it came out to that. Did you speak to any council members or whatever?
If I may, we have a motion made by Councilman Goods, seconded by Councilwoman Hurtak. Hang on, please, Marty. Any further discussion? We end discussion. I will have my statement. Chief Bennett was here, live on TV, discussing a possible raise for city council members. Boy, I don't know how that got leaked out to the press. Someone is saying we need to pay council because we want the brightest and the best. Joe the plumber is not the brightest and the best on how the city can be run. A woman who is with a PTA, who stays at home with the children, can't decide on how the city should be run. I think we have the brightest and the best right here. The majority of us have two jobs. I knew exactly what I was getting into when I ran for this office, and I knew exactly how much it paid. Me personally, I'm not going to change the money train in the middle of the tracks. I'm not going to do it. Roll call vote. Excuse me, Chief Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman. John Bennett, Chief of Staff. I just want the record to reflect that approximately a year ago, it was not a motion, but it was a request from the dais to examine council's salary. There was no political agenda behind it. It was a market analysis, not a raise analysis, not a merit analysis, but a market analysis based on measurable facts and brought back and not attached to council's budget, which was approved 2 days ago. It was placed in personnel reserves, and then it was moved into general fund operating reserves until such time if council, per Charter 606, votes to bring it back up for consideration in all or part or none, which exactly is what I'm hearing today as a motion to bring back on the 6th. So this would be a council-initiated motion based on the market analysis that money is sitting in a general fund right now. And if it's brought back in all or part or none, then, of course, the budget amendment would follow that. That's a council per charter motion. That's it.
Councilman Goode.
This was my motion. Mr. Shelby just came to me and was telling me, and I'm a person, I like to put things to bed. You know, I had said the 6 on the motion, but it can be put to bed today. So if we want it, we want it. We don't, we don't. We take the vote. So if I can restate the motion, same criteria and reference, we put it to bed today.
If I can, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Mr. Shelby.
In effect, what I'm hearing is that it's a vote today to either bring something back on the 6th or not. So in effect, it is determinative today.
That's right.
How the vote goes is whether it'll come back on the 6th, because if it doesn't
Correct.
come back on the 6th, it's off the table. That's what I just wanted council to be clear about. And if there was a motion to amend, perhaps to a different date, or a motion to set an amount, that's a motion to amend, that's totally within council's purview. That's not a policy, that's not what I'm suggesting. But I'm saying to you that the practical effect on this vote today is to make the determination of whether council is going to move forward as it's stated by Mr. Goose.
Correct. All right.
Councilman Carson.
Yeah, just 2 things real fast. In terms of whether this quote-unquote leaked or not, we know that the communication department pushes stories, but also out of 1,000+ pages in the budget, with lots of areas that need transparency, like Hannah Avenue, toilet tap, et cetera, somehow this was so important that it needed to be paraded in front of the media, and it ended up capturing all the attention of the media rather than the rest of the budget, which I proudly voted against. The second thing is, you all may have seen, there's a story today that says for employers, if you want to hire somebody, you have to offer a starting salary of $71,000. And when I graduated college, if you earned $24,000, that was a huge amount of money. And in Tampa, I don't think most starting salaries are $71,000. But the reason why we're facing the housing shortage is because wage inflation has not kept up with housing prices and other costs. And so the reality is that for the rest of the country, what city council is getting paid is a starting salary for a college grad. And yes, all kinds of people should be able to qualify for this, but the salaries are going up beyond what we all experienced as we were growing up. And lastly, I just want to reiterate, for me, this is about the integrity and of this organization going forward. I'm lucky enough that I can turn down most of the benefits, and I may or may not turn down this increase. But I think for the future of the organization, we need to put some kind of position in place so that this organization is not treated as an afterthought and as a rubber stamp. It needs to be a thoughtful organization that has the important discussions that Councilmember Hurtak talked about. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda.
Thank you. In fact, I looked at the same 3 cities. And I didn't look at population, or I didn't look at their budget. I looked at they were elected just like we were. And that was Miami, St. Pete, and Orlando. And that was 60,000, 58,000, I think 54, 56,000 their salaries. I forgot what cities there were. So I'm not opposed to a 6% raise, which gives you 53, and 3 times 6 is 56, and I mean, 3 times 6 is 3,000, and you're gonna get about $4,000 raise by the time you figure it out. So it would put you right in the middle of those things, and every year you're gonna get something, 4.5, whatever the cost of living is. So in a very short time, you're gonna get there, what you're talking about. I'm not against raises. What I'm against is that the general public that we're talking about, and there's more of them than there are up here, don't have that same raise coming to them. That's all. Thank you very much.
Again, I'm going to make a statement, then we're going to go to the vote. The integrity of any city council shouldn't be based on pay. It should be how they conduct themselves, how they vote, and how they care for the citizens.
Well, let's vote then.
I am looking at the headlines of some paper, some tabloid, some news thing that says city council spends more time talking about their wages than subpoena power. Roll call vote.
Carlson?
Yes.
Vieira?
I know.
Maniscalco?
No.
Hurtak?
Yes.
Goods?
Yes.
Miranda?
No.
Citro?
Because we have a child in the room, I'll say, heck no.
Who's that? Motion failed with Vieira, with Vieira, Maniscalco, Miranda, and Citro voting no.
Motion to receive and file by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor? We are recessed till 5:01.
I want you to trust me just the way I trust you. I want you to trust me just the way I trust you. I don't want nobody telling me what to do. I want you to love me just the way I love you. I want you to love me just the way